But like, let's say you had a country, like I don't know, like Sweden, for example, where the age of consent is 15, and someone from Sweden comes over here and has sex with a 15-year-old, and then we arrest them for child molestation. Like, does Sweden have a leg to stand on, demanding that we return their child molester because it's not illegal there?
Yeah, but she just said the
Um,
So what's this about you being a barbarian, Scott? I think I saw. The internet's very interested about that.
Oh, my joke to aristocracy? Is that what you're talking about?
You mean your admission to being a barbarian?
Yo, dude, so fucking lefties can never fucking take a joke and or can never miss an opportunity to virtue signal. I can't tell which one it is. Whether or not they're like genuinely offended, which is hilarious if they are, or whether or not if they're like, oh my god, a fucking, like even Sprouticus was like fucking was even Sprouticus like had to be in like, what kind of fucked up self-report is this? It's like, it's a fucking joke, you artard.
Some people wander through life looking for reasons to be upset about things.
Right? It was so hilarious.
I, for one, am deeply upset on behalf of all women everywhere.
The funny thing is that like somebody responded and like I immediately responded and was like, you know, I deeply apologize, or I apologize deeply for anyone I may or may not. Oh, I said, like, I apologize deeply for anybody that may or may not have been offended. You know, I will now be Hrolfir, Rolo, and I will protect the Seine River from these would-be women kidnappers and shit. And people were still after that being like, he's not joking, he's being serious. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ. You can tell some people were never beat as children.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Sounds like you're a barbarian.
Some people have had it
you're just
too
trying
easy.
to.
That's the problem. You
can just tell some people are well.
You actually should have like tripled down.
I mean, I did a little bit, but you know, it is, you know, there was enough people. Let's
bully Sprout about it when it gets here.
Oh God! I didn't bring this up for the record. Let the record show that Lactoid brought this up. All right.
Of course. Yeah.
Oh fuck!
I was confronting you. I was.
Are you being a good lefty?
Yeah, look,
confronting me for my misogyny.
I have to.
I refuse to believe that Sprout is that fucking like clueless. Like, come on.
Why?
I just.
Why is that difficult to believe?
I have some hope left. That's
you've engaged with him a few times, right? Like, why would that be surprising to you that he's dense?
There has to be something in there, Scott. I know it exists. Yeah, I'm gonna ask about it when it gets. Maybe he was joking too. Maybe that's the issue. We just didn't see it. Maybe we're the fucked up one.
Right. Ban everything that sounds bad unless it has /s behind it.
True.
Oh my god, this head is too green. I don't feel like fucking with my green screen right now. I just have a cold head.
Okay then. Thanks. Hey guys, how are you?
I don't like the way the Cospia flag looks.
Living.
Indeed.
I'm straight. I'm going back to the Shire.
Scott, did you change your lighting?
Oh, he's changed his face.
Yeah, I don't have my glasses. I have contacts in.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Okay, yeah. You look kind of like Mr. Girl for some reason. It's creeped me out, but I got it now.
Well, unlike Mr. Girl, I don't want to apologize for kid fuckers, so that should help out a little bit. You need to differentiate between the two of us quickly.
But I was gonna say you look really good.
Bromcast being like, let me just fucking swerve past that real quick. Anyways,
I was gonna say you look handsome. I rarely see you without your glasses. You like take it off like for a second, but then put them back on. But you look really good.
I appreciate it.
Significantly less nerdy.
I mean,
but you have
I had like a pretty bad prescription. I lost my other glasses in a car accident. And so like I had like my old glasses, and they were like scratched up in a bad prescription. And then like worse, I went to sleep when I had my my kids over, and like I had my glasses next to me. My daughter like crawls out of her crib and like stole my glasses and took like the rubber ends that like go behind your ears and just like put them somewhere. Like I looked, like I really did. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is about toddlers that can just find like a place to hide something important that you will never fucking find. So yeah, I just had like uncomfortable, scratched, fucked up glasses.
Yeah, hopefully it's not in her intestines right now. Like,
I mean, this was like months ago, so I feel like she's fine.
oh, okay, fair enough. But yeah, just waiting on everyone else. So audience members, just please be patient while we are waiting on the rest to show up. But they'll be here relatively soon. Until then, we will continue to dick around. So I don't know, guys. What's been going on? Okay.
I have a serious question. Something's been really bothering me.
Oh boy.
So I'm sure you guys saw the story about the nuclear advisor, whatever the fuck, that got caught stealing baggage.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's wild. He's apparently the fucking weirdo non-binary, you know, person that like the Biden administration was fawning over is like a serial fucking kleptomaniac.
I have not heard of this. What? Please explain this situation. I'm sorry.
It's like a bald Ezra Miller.
Yeah. I'm very surprised I haven't heard of this. It's what Scott said. You know, they got caught stealing a bunch of luggage, basically.
Okay.
What does it say? Okay, I just looked it up and it says unpacking female victims' clothes. Victim of what? Just theft? I'm still reading.
Yeah, basically they took luggage that wasn't theirs from the airport, lied about it when they were questioned, and eventually got caught. Yeah, and apparently it's not the first time this has happened.
Okay.
But the theft isn't what I was going to ask about. I have someone. I don't know how to say this without sounding like an asshole.
Do it.
Have you seen a picture of this person?
I just did.
Like, is it just me or like? Some of it's like non-binary people who like kind of go out of their way to like look somewhere in the middle between like male and female or whatever. Do they end up looking like just like demons? They look really. It's like they're deeply into the uncanny valley. Right? They're deeply into the uncanny valley.
You heard it here, folks.
Fuck out.
Non-binary people are all demons.
I think it's the bald head that really puts this one together, but
it's the bald head and the really bright red lipstick. It just creeps me the fuck out. I don't.
Oh, I don't have a picture with them with red lipstick yet. I just have.
That's all I'm seeing.
Really?
Right now, I literally just typed into DuckDuckGo stole luggage, and that's it. And the first thing that popped up is this.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I think some people. Oh, now I see the red lipstick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people do it very purposely, I believe.
Yeah, I think some people.
They're non-binary people. Like, should that shock anybody? Like, non-binary isn't like you're not trans. You don't have dysphoria. Instead of just being like, yeah, I'm androgynous or whatever. Like, non-binary is an admission of being in the cult of fucking wokeness. Like, obviously, they're gonna be a little fucky.
Unless you subscribe to the idea that non-binary is trans, and it's part of being trans is the fact that you're not man and you're not woman. Like a trans woman who's a friend of mine said that she's non-binary, and that not non-binary in this sense where you're kind of like, I'm gonna say they're probably deliberately trying to look like fairly in the middle, but non-binary just because you're bound to be in the middle.
It's not even in the middle. It's not
if you're
even
not
like
right, but like if you're not non-binary because you're like boy modding or something like that, that's one thing, right? Like, but like if you're like non-binary, like as like an aesthetic choice or as like an identity without an essence, right? As queer theory puts it, like, and you're trying to identify as this liminal space between genders as if that's even a fucking thing. Like, you're probably a little fucking cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
I think the more premeditated it is, and the more like, yeah, like where you have a vision and then you go out and execute that vision, then that's going towards what you're talking about. But if it's like, oh, I'm stuck in this fucking non-binary space, that's when it's trans. That's when it's.
I don't know. This person
doesn't end
just
up-
screamed fucking narc to me. Like they're just full blown fucking. That's what I saw. Like the moment I saw them, I was like, oh wow, okay.
The reason I'm asking this, right, is like I saw another like article over the weekend that I think is like really old, right? It was a meme actually. It was a picture of like 3 non-binary people, and it was supposedly like an article that was called, why can't my famous non-conforming friends or whatever get laid?
Yeah,
yeah.
It's
and
like
it
you're all
has a
fucking
picture
weird
of
looking.
them. And it has a picture of them right under, and they look fucking like fucking monsters. Like not even like physically, right? They look like normal people physically, but it's like the way that they're dressing, the fucking makeup, everything. They are going out of their way to look like they belong in a horror movie, right? And I wondered if this is. And by the way, that's a real article, by the way. I looked it up just to make sure, and I read it. It's very interesting, actually.
Yeah, no, they look like they're animals trying to signify that they're venomous.
Yeah, it was really fucking weird. So I spent like a couple hours right over the weekend just looking up famous non-binary people, right? And there's like a trend that I noticed where they like it's not even like bold, it's not androgynous, they're like going out of the way. Gosh, so reclusive solitude users in the chat, they're garish, right? Looking at them is actually like painful on your eyes, and I think they're doing this intentionally, and I wonder why that is, because they definitely stand out, right? So if it's like a narcissistic thing, maybe that makes sense, but you can stand out without being ugly, right? And I think these people, the way that they're doing their outfits and their makeup and shit is like unappealing, just like to everybody. I can't imagine a person who will look at this and think, oh shit, that looks really good.
It feels more
I think it's like really
it feels more histrionic to me than anything.
I feel it's like way more analogous to like incel though, right? Like that whole like idea of like I deserve to get fucked. You know, like that's I think like what this is more appealing to. You know, and I kind of hate that regardless.
Wait, get fucked? Or on the
Yeah.
incel side, I understand, but how is that fitting here?
Well, okay, so why can't my non-binary friends get laid, right? You know, or why can't my famous gender non-conforming friends get laid, right? Which is that they're not adhering to like the societal standards of attractiveness. So you're losing like part of the value supposition that it comes from any relationship we engage in. You know, all human interaction is transactional, period, right? This is part of that transaction. You know, if you want to conform, you'll probably get laid better, right? Or, you know, whatever. That's just how it is. You have a higher pool and market that you can like work through. If you're doing something that's a little bit weird, then you have to have value elsewhere that people are going to want to take or ascribe from that
But
relationship.
these are like famous
yeah.
speakers and shit, right? Like one of these people.
Well, so I think it's a
I've never
totally
heard
different.
of them.
I think it's totally different. And the reason I say it's totally different is on the incel side, you have mostly people that are like red pilled in some regard. And they feel like for a stable society or for their own selfish reasons that they deserve companionship and like want certain things in society to stop that keep them from being able to get that, some like reinstitution of patriarchal norms or something, right? Whereas like with the non-binary people, this just seems like the philosophy at work, right? Like the philosophy is the entire point of it is to destroy the idea of categories, right? To destroy the idea of, you know, it's gender abolitionist at its heart, right? Thinking sex was gender abolitionist, even when talking about like the deviancy of like homosexual behavior, right? Like in the early 80s, like it's always been an identity without an essence because, you know, we'll never have freedom from, you know, the oppressive superstructure of cis heteronormativity until gender is destroyed. So I think in one place it's the philosophy itself, and in the other place it's incels that are, you know, red pill. So, and I don't know that the philosophy of red pill necessarily dictates that. I think they just feel some form of like unfairness with reality.
Yeah. So I think what you guys were saying before, like the garishness, like I don't. Obviously, I don't ascribe this to all non-binary people. I know very few non-binary people, but like I've seen this over some who are within the at least in the public eye, right? where that like the clash between your gender expectations is like what they're going for, right? Like they want that friction when you look at them, because it, for whatever reason, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess in the end, it doesn't really matter to me because, you know, I'm going to treat them with kindness and respect. But it is like that uncomfortable feeling is the point.
Wait,
yeah,
why would you
honestly.
treat all
Yeah, but
people
like-
that belong to a group with kindness and respect?
I'm saying, okay.
Yeah,
Scott,
I think
Even Nazis, Prime.
I'm gonna call
Even
them
even
fucking weirdos for
Nazis.
their
Obviously, Prime is going to treat all Nazis with kindness and respect.
I just wanted to say one
They
thing.
deserve.
It's
They
woke
deserve
to be a Nazi now, though.
True, Kanye. Yeah, I just wanted to say
Thanks,
one thing
Kanye.
though. Rez, I really like
Nazis were always
before how you said like all society is like transactional. And for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, Ayn Rand
Human
wrote this book
interaction.
called
Yeah,
Atlas
human,
Shrugged.
not society.
And so-
Human interaction is transactional, and the way we engage with it is. Society isn't necessarily transactional because society is a concept that we put forth to go ahead and make it easier for survival. That's a transaction that humans put on society. Society doesn't put transactions on humans.
Sure. So all human actions are transactional. So you can see this was written and this was established by Ayn Rand. For those of you who haven't read this book, it's a very good book. You can get it very cheap. I highly recommend it. Thank you, Rez,
The virtue of selfishness
for
is better.
bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just being realistic. Like that's just how we treat reality, you know. And that's like, I mean, that's it. We're literally just a clump of cells that are just trying to go ahead and be a clump of
Okay.
cells the next day.
I'm a clump
Like,
of
you know,
cells.
you're gonna do anything to make.
Never,
it.
I've never
We
heard.
can-
I've never heard a better summarization of objectivism than just being realistic and engaging in reality.
like objective something.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, you know.
But okay, on that, the last thing on that non-binary thing is that like I guess I can conceptualize, you know, the gay identity, all right, lesbian or gay identity. I can conceptualize trans identity, even though I've never experienced, you know, gender dysphoria, like not being right in your own skin. I have trouble conceptualizing non-binariness, and I don't know what to do with it. And again, like it's not going to affect how I treat a person. It's just that like it's
It feels like an ideological position and not like an actual identity.
But see, here's the thing: is that the philosophy of queer theory has always been gender abolitionist, right? It is always and it has always been that way from the very beginning, and it's still this way today. The problem is that identities of outliers is something that we can understand because those outliers exist, right? So if someone has like persistent gender dysphoria from a young age, and you know what I mean, there's plenty of people that have had that transition, and then as they go through transition, they clearly don't have the same secondary sexual characteristics as the sex that they were assigned at birth, right? And so we recognize that as like, okay, that's a thing that I can name and that I can see that doesn't fit neatly into the categories as I understand them, right? Non-binary, right, is an amorphous idea of the abolition of the category itself. It is a political statement that these categories are not true and fast categories, but instead that there is a spectrum, that there is this place this liminal space between two categories, and that doesn't fit with any logical analysis, not a Bayesian inference or a biological one. And so that's the issue, is that you're coming up against an ideology that is telling you that reality is different than it is.
What if somebody like genuinely doesn't feel like either though? Like they just like it brings them dysphoria to identify as either. Like what about that?
Yeah. That's called being a human. Like
What if
every human being has times that they feel like, every man has a moment where they feel like less of a man. Every woman has
talking
moments
about
where they feel like
persistency.
less of a woman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what if like you just don't ascribe any part of value to that part of yourself to begin with? Right? Like if you don't ascribe value and like to gender or something like that, and that's how you get out of your
I think that's co-bonds.
non-binariness.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's
I think
Sorry.
people who said that they send no value, they wouldn't care either whether they're male or female. You're coping.
Well, if
I
it
don't
doesn't
believe
affect
you.
you,
Let's
it's
assume-
more
let's
why-
assume-
It doesn't
it's
affect
true.
you because it's what you are, right? I don't
True.
think there's no way to stick your brain into a female body. So like making that claim at all is kind of silly.
Like,
So let's
identifying
assume
with not
that's
being
true.
brown when I'm brown.
Let's assume that that's true, right? The question then becomes twofold. Number one, what is the prevalence rate of individuals that actually feel that way, fully and wholly and persistent, right? Is it like in California and Gen Z where it's like 35% of Gen Z kids? No, right? Like that's bullshit. But let's say, and if it is, and if it's an infinitesimally small category, right? Then this is an outlier. This doesn't say anything about the categories themselves. But if it is, now we have to assume, let's assume it is 35% of people that their entire lives don't feel like a biological male or biological female, right? Which would be an insane anti-historical claim, and our species likely would not have propagated and fucked to the point where we exist today if that were true. But if we assume all of those things as true, which is what the queer theorists are kind of putting forward, then we're still in a different. Like, where does that leave us? It doesn't match the reality that we exist, right? It doesn't
I don't-
match the reality that we
I don't-
propagated.
I don't think that's what they've been putting forward, though. I disagree with that. It seems like so. I haven't heard this. I mean, I think maybe Doobie has presented something like this. Some sort of claim that Gen Z, like 35% in some poll, say they're non-binary or something. Right? Is that what you're saying? To be clear,
That's wild.
If that was
I don't
the
think
case,
It's like LGBTQ, right? So that would include
Yeah,
like
it's
the
not
entire
specific,
category
like-
of like non-binary, queer, lesbian, gay, transgender.
I did see that like the rates of
intersex, asexual.
the rates of non-binary though are like just rapidly increasing. The rates of like
Right.
gay is kind of like it's increasing, but not nearly to the same
Yeah,
extent.
because you can't just claim gay and get social brownie points while you're still a dude fucking only girls. But
Yeah,
you can
that
be a
is part of the
17-year-old in high school and be like, I'm non-binary. I'm one of the cool kids, right? And you can
Really-
drop that shit whenever you want.
It would be really interesting to see what would be different, like in the amounts of people identifying, if it didn't positively affect your social capital. Like, what if it was
Yeah.
actually you were like way more ashamed, or maybe if you
Well,
identified as
We
non-binary
can
That would
see
be-
this.
We
can
We
see
had a
this
time.
comparing-
yeah,
We can
2
we can
decades.
compare currently like
10 years ago.
what are the rates? Well, no, we don't have to go back in time.
Well,
We can
no, but it
compare-
wasn't.
We
you
can
can't
compare like
exactly
Ohio
compare
to
that.
California. Right?
Right.
Like, why is it that in California the rates are double, triple, quadruple than they are in more conservative states? Is it only social stigma that keeps people from being able to express their genders don't exist non-binariness?
So
No.
this is what Doobie has been putting forward when we've had this conversation, right? When we like talk about the say gay bill. If I say anything wrong, Doobie, please correct me. But like basically that.
Well, already you said something wrong. It's HB 1557, parental rights and education, not the
Okay,
don't
thank
say
you.
gay bill. That bill doesn't exist. There you go. Gotcha.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you as always.
Always.
But yeah, that like there seems to be like a trendiness to it, and look, I think this is to be expected within that age cohort where people are trying to figure out who they are, right? Like, I think the only difference between this identity, non-binary, and others, right, like being grunge or emo, right, is that a non-binary happens to be politically volatile, right? Like, like you could see like the rise of all these other identities at certain points in time. Is like, weird, like, why do so many people identify as being emo or whatever the fuck, right? Yeah, it's just kids trying things out, and I guess that's just to be expected, and it would be otherwise completely unnotable, right? Or if this wasn't like attached to gender ideology or whatever the fuck you want to talk to.
Well, it's not just that. It's also the fact that there's like demands for legal protections that goth
Holy
kids don't demand. There's no legal protection for grunge kids in the same way that there is for
Fair enough.
non-binary, or that it's being like requested for non-binary people.
Well,
Yeah.
the real problem is that like parents have a kind of a sense of like what is fucking with their kids, and sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong, right? But I think the real key here is that, you know, in adolescence, right? If we're looking at like Eric Erickson's psychosocial model, right? Like we're really looking at like identity versus like role confusion. And so like during this period, you're exactly right. Like they're experimenting with who they are, how they want to identify, how they want to be seen by the world, what is their role in the world, both in relationships and in social circles, etc. And every generation experiments during this phase. And it often causes political backlash, right? Like, let's not forget the kids that were playing D&D or the kids that were listening to metal when their parents were freaking out about the satanic panic, right? The problem is that you're dealing with an ideology that has infected academia, infected the American Medical Association, infected the American Psychological Association, that is pharmaceutical companies working with hospitals. And there seems to be a driving push towards things that take this out of the domain of experimentation and into the domain of permanent harm, right? So social transition, is there a lot of permanent harm that comes from that? I doubt it, right? But when that leads you into an ideology that like gives you brownie points and love bombs you and tells you you're so great, what your identity is actually trans, while you yourself are trying to figure that out. And then you get pushed into this idea of, well, maybe I should take a pause on my puberty for a moment and just take some androgen therapy. And like, that's what everybody is telling me is good, right? Permanent harm. And then what we know is that you start doing these drugs, you're getting this love bombing, and there's this whole circle where the authority figures themselves that used to back against the teenage rebellion are now pushing this ideology. You're talking about something wildly and totally different.
I think so. I hear you on that, and that like there are consequences, and I like people say that the puberty blockers have like zero consequences. I never quite understood how that could be the case, right? Like that you're making a chemical change to your body and you're holding off your puberty, and it doesn't seem like a rubber band that just like snaps back, like that's time.
Yeah, no, it's just a bullshit claim. But the problem is that like, claims about transgender health and medicine are inherently political claims. And if you exist in, as a doctor, as a researcher, as a psychologist, as a counselor, and you make claims about those things, then you run the risk of your license, your funding, your tenure, etc. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will be fired or that you will get in a bunch of trouble or that you will be denied opportunities. You certainly run that risk, and everyone in those communities is aware of that risk.
Yeah. I just don't know. I guess the problem here is it reminds me of the problem when it comes to like abortion rhetoric, right? Like I've said this many times before, and I will continue to say this. Like, I think it's actually very fair to say that a fetus, or whatever stage it is at that point in time, right, is a human, is an actual baby, and aborting it would be killing it, right? Now I think that's just like an accurate statement of reality, but like and it's from a person who's pro-choice, right? This is from a person who's pro-choice, but the problem is that the anti-side, right, is so vile that they're talking to women who are going through this like emotional critical point in time, right? And they'll go to them and say, well, you're a murderer, right? And as a response, right, people say, well, then it's not a baby, right? Like it's not a baby, like this is just a medical procedure, but that's like a political response that like diverges from like reality, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think both can be true, that hey, you are taking the life of a human, but like you're not a murderer in any useful sense of the term. So yeah, so when relating that to
no, I think you're close. I think you're really close. I think the real answer here, right, is that our politics are downstream of our philosophy. And people very rarely want to talk about philosophy because it's boring or it's really difficult to get into. And so the conservative deontologist says, well, you just said it was killing a human. Well, then there's no discussion now. It's murder, period. And the consequentialist says, okay, but let's look at a balance of happiness let's look at a balance of like of the positive and the outcomes of what is occurring. And the consequentialist looks at this and says, you have a baby that can't feel anything, that is not self-aware, that doesn't even know of its own existence, versus a human that their entire life is put on hold by what is occurring, and we can alleviate all of those problems for this person without actually causing any knowable harm. So then they give a political prescription afterwards.
I just want to connect the two thoughts that I was having, right? So, like, coming from the abortion, right? No problem. Coming from abortion to like these discussions about like trans individuals and that love bombing you talked about, right? That this extreme positive reaction rather than a measured one, I think, springs forth from an environment where trans people are like, some people are trying to erase trans people, like the other side is just so bad that the response is, okay, then we got to go overboard. And it makes it difficult to have like these nuanced conversations about like, well, are we maybe pushing people too early to have some sort of surgical intervention or chemical intervention, right? Like, I think that's like a useful conversation to have. But like when you've just been told that as a trans person, you need to be purged, right? Like, it makes it tough to hear that. It makes it tough to engage with that. So yeah, that's how I think those two things relate.
Yeah, I mean,
have you heard of this channel? So I saw on David Pakman there was an interview with this guy named Professor Dave Explains. That's his YouTube channel name. Anybody familiar with that guy? I'm gonna say no since nobody's speaking.
No.
Anyway, he has. Sorry, his name is Professor Dave Explains. And he has a really interesting YouTube channel where he explains like all these mostly scientific things, varying from like chemistry to biology and physics and but he also has a video on transgender, like kind of like doing a breakdown and talking about how people aren't really trying to push kids to do the puberty blockers and to like nobody's cutting off people's boobs when they don't even have boobs yet. I haven't watched the video yet, but it sounded very convincing.
Wait, who said people were cutting off people's boobs?
Oh shit, Sprouts here.
Maybe not. Nobody did
totally
here,
derail this
but people do that
conversation
in the context of the.
There is that
Can
one.
I totally derail the
It
conversation
sounds like
for like a minute?
It sounds like great.
Extremely
It sounds like
Go
a
ahead.
great. Real quick,
I'll
it
give you a
sounds like a
chance, Stevie.
great video for me to react to and call all the bullshit lies he said.
You won't be able
Sprout.
to, but go
Love
for
it.
it.
Sprout. Do you
What's up,
think that
Doobie?
Scott here is a closet rapist?
A closet rapist?
Why
Is that
are
the
we bringing this
conversation?
up again?
I told you I was gonna ask him about it when he got here. Hold on.
No, I don't
do
think
you
he's a closet
that
rapist.
If
I think
the
it's-
world went to shit, right? We're like Mad Max world. Scott would go around raping people.
No, I don't think he's a closet rapist. I don't think he'd go around raping people.
Then why did you think that his tweet to aristocracy or about aristocracy was a self-report?
Because for one, it was extremely objectifying. For two, there's several other reasons. It was a joke. It was probably a joke, and I'm gonna give that
Probably a
leniency
joke.
to
You
it.
think there's a chance that it wasn't a joke?
I don't know. I'm not Fabian, so it's probably a joke. I'm gonna give that leniency to it. I
I think
do
there's
think
a chance it wasn't a joke.
Yes, I think there's a chance it wasn't
Scott,
a joke.
my hope is.
I mean, there's obviously a chance that whenever someone says something that's not actually a joke. So, and then two, I'm gonna give that leniency to it that it was a joke, and even if it was a joke, it went too far in my mind.
Yeah, well,
So, like, I'm not backing
aristocracy
down from this
disagrees
position.
with you.
Okay, that's cool. Aristocracy disagree with me as much as she wants. I think it went too far.
You're such a
Oh my
gentleman. Scott.
god. Oh my god. Well, I'm glad Doobie gave you the opportunity to get your virtue signal brownie points. But we
It's
all
not
know you're full
virtue
of shit.
signaling if you just think it went too far. It's not virtue signaling. I don't know why we're talking about like drama like barely anyone knows about. So
It's not
Like-
drama. It was a question. I was kind of curious to hear like the way that your brain works.
I mean,
and
I
now
think
know that
it's
it doesn't.
definitely fucking interjecting drama into the
It
situation.
is a little bit
I
of
mean,
a drama. but
And I know
like
that's what Sprouticus wanted, He just probably
that's
didn't
what
want
I
it brought up on
wanted.
the panel.
I stated it days before I even knew I was coming onto this panel, bro.
Yeah, that's what I said. All right,
Yeah.
Kathy Newman.
Okay.
Take a fucking joke and sit down.
Okay. All right.
I think I would have sex slaves if I could, in, like the Mad Max future. honest.
After all of
But-
that, Doobie just, yeah, I think I would if I could, if I had the power and authority.
You would.
Oh,
I probably
sorry.
wouldn't see a reason not to. I feel like the more important thing would be repopulating the planet. So I just like have a ton of what's the guy's name in Mad Max, the big fat guy with the milk.
Oh yeah.
Immortan Joe.
Yeah.
I'd be trying to make like the perfect human like race, right? So I just have like a ton of hot women that I'm trying to impregnate all the time.
Why would that involve
Perfect
your
human
genetics,
race,
then?
huh?
You know I'd involve my genetics. Okay, look. I got my 23andMe
Alright.
done. I have 0 genetic defects.
I
It's fine.
don't know how Mexicans would be involved in.
Oh, God.
But
I mean, if you want to get rid of the idea of race, right? Like, then what better way to start than with breeding with Mexicans, which is already an amalgamation of European, native, and black,
oh, fair enough. That's a
right? Like,
yeah,
they're
but black.
basically
You hear that, Frank?
anti-race.
that's a good point. But not enough black to be on all black everything, of course.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I think you would acknowledge that. Okay. But anyway, I thought this discussion on transness was actually pretty good and pretty nuanced for what we usually do. So that was fun. All right. Since everyone is here, we had someone drop out the last second, so everyone is here. Let's get into it. Thanks all for stopping by. This is the Reverie Roundtable, which we have Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a great group of individuals here. I'm really excited. Guys, if you are enjoying the oh god. Coconut Cake says Doobie is hot as fuck, right? All right, we'll put that out there.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah, I won't complain.
back, boys.
Are you still a furry if it's a frog, considering frogs have no fur?
Scaly.
mm,
Do frogs have scales?
Yes. Yeah,
I don't-
amphibians
yeah,
have
I'm not-
scales too, don't they?
I don't think they have scales.
I don't think so.
I don't
No,
think
I think
scales.
I think that it's technically scales because fish have scales, and like that's
Yeah,
like
but they're not-
It
Yeah,
is
fish
not
are not
slime.
amphibians.
This
It
like
is
in between. This
mucus.
is amphibian.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. A bunch of non-biologists tried their
Yeah,
best.
get
and failed.
fucked. I googled it. They do not have scales. Okay, I'm scale free. Smooth skin that the women love.
Oh boy. So anyway, guys,
I don't
if
know what
you
you're
enjoy
talking
this,
about,
content,
Samariana.
hit that follow button. If you
Apparently,
just follow the
there's
channel,
no
hit
way that I
follow
could
button, make
debunk
notifications
Professor
once, and
Dave
then live, hit me
Explains.
up on my social media. I got a whole bunch of them. All
What are you
right.
talking about?
Okay, and consider
welcome to the
subscribing
chat, Great
to
Sag.
subs, get ad reviewing, and the emotes and all that good stuff. All right, we
No,
will start
touch frogs, not touch
by
grass.
introducing our friend Lactoid, right? Thanks for coming back, right? After what happened last time, right? I mean, you remember.
Yeah,
that
it was.
big loss that happened during the open panel.
Wait, what happened?
I forgot about. I see. I was so busy kicking ass during the actual.
Now we need to
panel.
know actually what you were thinking about.
Yeah.
That way we can get what was in your mind, because you were shaking your head yes, as if he was talking about something. He was talking about something completely different. So now we need to know what happened in your head.
I was acknowledging the words that were coming into my ears, but I will say, yeah, no, Prime, the person went on and said, yes, prostitutes should be forced to not be able to discriminate, and I didn't have an answer. When someone bites a bullet that hard, sometimes you just lose. I didn't have. Anyway, no, thank you for having me. You can find me on Anti-Communism United, Discord, Twitch, and YouTube.
Be clear.
Oh, I thought you meant about lactoids based segregation arguments.
Oh, no, that was. I mean, that was.
Those were
the point.
private, Aiko. You don't.
But no, and to be clear, right? I was the one who made the argument, and it wasn't that prostitutes can't discriminate. It's that brothels can, right? There you go. All right, so
I believe we call them sex workers.
indeed, right? But anyway, I won that one. In case you missed that open panel, you should have stuck around for that one. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we have to fly in like hookers from overseas just to serve a specific. Yeah, all right.
Oh.
Got to go back. I made a better argument than what he's relating. Okay, let's go to Scott. Scott, thanks for coming through once again, friend.
Yeah, I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. You can find us Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere. Yeah, it's been fun. Breaking news: apparently, the Trust and Safety Council has been disbanded on Twitter. Just figured I'd put that out there. Gonna have to rebuild from the ground up. Figured that was pertinent potentially for tonight. Who knows? That being said, tomorrow I'm going to be doing charity stream for survivors.org under PAVE, Partners for Action, Voices for Empowerment, to help women, mostly women. Men technically can be a part of it, but women for survivors of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, sex trafficking, etc. You should come hang out. It's going to be fun. Mike Harlow is going to come play some trivia with us. Aristocracy is going to show up for a little while. Brian McWilliams. We might have a few other guests, people come in and out, and teach you guys how to actually research charities using websites to look at charities, how to read a 994, how to actually know where it is that your money is going and track your money to ensure that if you feel like donating to a charity, that it is a charity worth donating to and not just a 501c4 that's like a shell corp for like politicians to get elected or something like that. So definitely come out tomorrow. It should be fun, giving out prizes and good stuff.
Thanks so much. Next we have Reservoir.
Whatever way you want to say it.
We have Rez, who the first time appearing on this program, I have appeared with him on Giga Datum's channel. That's where we met. I had a really good time there, and so I'm so happy that he accepted an invite. How are you, Rez?
Tired. That's about it. I was yelled about Russia and Brittney Griner for 2 hours before I came here. Did not prep for that whole conversation that we had, but I'm doing great. Twitch.tv/Resver. I write a lot of documents and I track drama across various segments of Twitch. And I don't know, I like making PDFs a lot, and it's pretty cool. That's about what I do, so check it out.
Thank you. We have another brand new individual to the Reverie, but who has stopped by open panels a few times. We have Angel Dreams, or is it just Angel?
Yeah, you can just call me Angel. The Dreams is just because Angel's taken on Twitch, pretty much.
Fair enough. Angel, thanks
Checks
for stopping by. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Angel. I make a variety of content, some panels, some game shows. I do prefer like a little bit more of an intellectual sphere than just like straight drama and yelling and whatnot. So that's why I'm happy to be here. And I also just like to chill out and play games. And I don't know, I might get into doing charity streams. We'll see. Might be potentially on the horizon.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have our friend Aiko, which everyone should be familiar with in our channel, who comes through in open panels all the time, makes really good points, or infuriates me, one or the other.
Those are not mutually exclusive. I can make really good points that infuriate you.
There you go. A completely mutually exclusive. Sorry, they never line up. Aiko, thanks for being here, friend.
Hey, I just want to say, I was listening to the before panel, what you guys were talking about. When Ayn Rand came up, it sort of reminded me. I'd like to talk to anybody about this, but it'd be a good panel one day too. Is Ayn Rand, specifically her critique of why Jesus is deeply immoral, and I think that would be a fun topic to go into. Ayn Rand versus Jesus.
Okay,
Dude, hold on. Prime guys, I know you've had him on a couple of times and he can be a little long-winded. Wellspring, right, who shows up, he is an incredibly aware objectivist. If you can get him to talk about why Jesus is immoral, you will watch your entire panel turn into fucking fire. Just trust me, if you're gonna do something, he will get so passionate to talk shit on Jesus as an objectivist that knows his shit.
Are we talking about Jesus the guy, or Jesus believing in Jesus is immoral?
Jesus.
All of it.
Okay.
The savior of mankind.
Scott, I don't know who Wellspring is, but
he's been on an open panel a couple times, but he doesn't usually have a camera. But he's a really smart objectivist and a little bit. He's a lot.
Okay.
But
well, help me connect with him, and then maybe we can do that. Sounds like a lot of fun. All right. Let's go to our next friend, Sprouticus, back with Sprouticus. How are you feeling, friend?
Feeling a lot better than I was the past couple weeks. It's been a rough time in the life of the Sprouticus. But I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be back here. It's good to be back. Good to see new faces. But interested in the topics. But yeah, looking forward to it. I'm also starting up a few other things. The War Room should be coming back with me and Matty Cakes, and starting to plan to start a podcast called Man Up, where we deal with men's issues and what's really going on in society with men and what we can do to fix it. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Yep.
And I'm very glad to have you back. And that you're doing okay. So let's go to our friend Doobie. Last but not least, Dark Lord and Savior Doobie. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. And just a couple quick updates, while I'm doing my little opening. That person I said that looks like a demon, that non-binary nuclear advisor person, that was just fired, like 30 minutes ago or something. So that's pretty interesting. But more importantly, Sam Bankman-Fried, the FTX dude, was just arrested in the Bahamas like an hour ago. So good news for the people who
that was
screwed over
inevitable.
The world is healing. Sam Bankman-Fried arrested. The crazy demons fired.
That guy's
Trust
been
and
going on a
safety
media
disbanded.
tour. That guy's been going on a media tour, like confessing to crimes. Like
that's what I was
interview after another.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm gonna give you guys, everybody and your audience, some legal advice here. If you commit fraud, don't talk to the media. Don't go admitting it. That's probably not a good idea.
Oh,
well, if you're going to,
better advice, don't talk to the media.
Well, if you're going to admit it, go ahead and go to somewhere that doesn't have extradition treaties with the United States. Like,
I didn't think it was necessarily.
So you're saying go to Russia?
But
worked for Snowden.
I'm glad that's happening here. All right, let's move forward. Okay, first topic. It has long been said that if governments negotiate with hostage takers, then that will only encourage more of it. The U.S. has traded a Russian arms dealer for a basketball player. Is this worth it considering possible future ramifications? Is it reasonable to not negotiate with hostage takers if that will endanger the lives of the currently held hostages? Has the Biden administration made the world more dangerous for Americans by taking this action? Okay, yeah, so the whole thing with Brittney Griner and Victor Boot by now. We've talked about it before. I wrote this question because I wanted to expand on this and not necessarily just focusing on this specific interaction, but the concept of doing this in general, right? If you think that Victor Boot is as dangerous as the media has been making him out to be, right? If you think that is the case, then should we not have been negotiating at all? The moment the Russians tell us this is what they want, we're like, no dice, right? Should we be operating on some principle that because we want to keep people from being taken in the future, right? In this case, as a political pawn, right? I will sacrifice the person in the present. So I'll expand on that and on that whole concept. Start with Lactoid.
Yeah, so I thought this might happen, so I did two separate intros on this one. Anyway, so on one hand, freeing a weed smoker and a gun seller convicted on shaky grounds seems like quite the libertarian victory. But on the other hand, it doesn't feel very nice to free somebody willing and able to sell weapons to an organization which intended to use them against Americans, especially when it's for a political face. If Griner had been caught in Thailand or China, she would have faced far more severe punishment, potentially even death. But when someone gets caught for committing a crime, which is also a crime in the US, and then a potentially dangerous man is released for her instead of any other captives, I can see why that can be frustrating. It's good that an American is brought home, but let's not pretend this was a good deal. If it is a good deal, and in the future, if we can make good deals, then I think it does make sense to make those deals going forward. Sometimes you got to negotiate, and settlements, both parties walk away unhappy. That's the point.
Hey, thank you so much. Next, we go to Scott.
Yeah, so I actually struggled trying to find the right position here to understand like where the inherent aggression is or isn't in this calculus. And I'm not necessarily married to it, but where I currently sit, I'm actually willing to change my opinions if, especially if like Lactoid or someone that understands libertarianism presents a good argument, is that I don't think the U.S. has some duty of care to a prisoner so long as they're not within the United States. I'll explain. The United States has taken it upon themselves as a state actor to be the monopoly on the enforcement of violence and imprisonment. That being said, if they want to get rid of somebody outside of the U.S., I don't actually think that there's any reason that they have to maintain the capture of said person. However, I also do not believe that the United States has the authority to, in any way, shape, or form, prevent the families that are victims of the conspiracy that the Merchant of Death had with terrorist organizations in supplying them arms for the express purpose of killing those people, to stop them from legally being able to hire assassins to kill him. I think you should be able to go onto Google and say, where can I find a good assassin? And it should be perfectly legal because they abdicated any responsibility that they had to maintaining the justice system by giving him up. And so if I want to hire an assassin and my family was victimized by this person's conspiracy, I should be able to do that, and we should cheer them on for their right to kill this person. It's not murder, it's just justice because he didn't serve his time. Now, I do recognize a bad deal when I see one, right? Like, this isn't like a good deal. Like, it's not an intelligent move. I don't know what the fuck we presumably gained from this, right? We gained a micro celebrity that nobody fucking knew until this situation, right? And if you say that I'm wrong, bullshit, name a fucking WNBA team without Googling other than the one she's on. And I guarantee you can't fucking do it, right? Even if you love basketball, you probably can't. So we gained a micro celebrity that broke Russian law. We didn't get Paul Whelan. Now, Paul Whelan might actually be a spy, or he might just be a piece of shit. I don't fucking know. But, like, we could have at the very least, like, negotiated a better deal, I guess. So I don't really know that we gained or lost anything from this. Like, it may seem in the future, it may cause foreign states to be more likely to capture people if we have people that they want, that they find are valuable. Then they can just kind of grab someone on trumped up charges in this administration, and others, Trump as well, and Obama, right? This isn't like a Democrat thing, have shown that they will trade up like war criminals and for like random people brought up on trumped up charges. So it just seems stupid. But I don't know. But I'm excited to hear what Reverie is saying too, because he just did a whole panel on this. So maybe he's privy to some shit I didn't know.
Rez.
I'm going to start with a meme. My first thing I want to say, I agree with Fabian Liberty's first take that the homeless should be able to kill politicians that don't advocate for them. I think that is based as fuck. Second, I do think it's a good deal because I think that a lot of what we can look at Victor Bout doing going forward is going to be negligible, most likely as a propaganda arm of the Russian government. We have seen him already join with white nationalist groups to function through that. His actual effectivity of smuggling goods very specifically comes from his ability to leverage Soviet-era technology that he was exporting to the world. And as Russia is currently going ahead and becoming an importer of weapons rather than an exporter of weapons, I think he will be reduced in that capacity if he goes back to that. But ultimately, I think it becomes a propaganda win for both sides, which keeps it honestly like sort of neutral to positive for the US. I think that personally, it speaks to our nation's ethos because I think Brittney Griner is an anti-American, honestly, very, very anti-American, socialist, whatever you want to call her, that goes against everything we stand for. And I am proud of my country for going ahead and standing up for voices that they don't like hearing. I think that there is a moral
presuming they don't like
that
it
we have there that we should be going ahead and trenching ourselves to. But yeah, even like further than that, like I think that when we take the argument of Paul Whelan, we can look at the negotiations over the summer that the Biden administration was doing for Whelan, and the Biden administration putting pressure on Germany to release a spy from there. They are classifying Paul Whelan as a much higher threat than BRITNEY Griner. For what it's worth. And I think that the better argument could be for this Fogel person who got arrested. But even then, I am in support of any Americans being brought back home.
Angel.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's clear here that Britney's weed charge, which is like cannabis residue in her vape pen or whatever it was, is part of the equation that people are just glossing over, that she did nothing at all wrong, whereas Paul Whelan actually was charged with espionage. Also, Trump turned down the prisoner swap that was, I guess, in talks prior when he was the president. And I forget the guy's name. I'm trying to find it. The one that Russia wants, because like we could also negotiate a swap for Whelan.
Bitch,
but,
what are you talking about?
I believe the guy, his name starts with a V, I think, the Russian guy. He's being held in Germany right now, and it's a different prisoner. So Vinnick? Okay. Anyway, so he's in Germany, so it's not as easy, obviously, to access him. And I'm sure that could also be negotiated in the future. It's just a separate case. And so as we go through these issues, maybe he will be released or traded. Okay, I think there was something else I was going to mention, but I can't remember what it is, so I'll end
Is
there.
she just saying random things? What's her argument?
Yeah, so near as I can tell, there are three issues that always come up with this conversation. One is whether or not the trade was worth it, so that's the Victor Boot conversation, which people have already brought up. The second one is whether or not there are other worthy prisoners that should have gone ahead of Griner. And we can talk about that, but two of the candidates are Paul Whelan that everyone's talked about, and another guy named Fogel, who was a teacher out of Pennsylvania, who was also caught with a much larger amount of marijuana on his way in. The thing about Fogel is he was caught earlier than Griner, so a lot of people think that he should have been released earlier. It was a sort of a similar thing. Well, we can go in later as to how those things compare. And the third is just the general idea of not negotiating, like incentivizing people to just capture more and more people so that they can get their own people back. And China's been doing this kind of stuff historically as well. And we can talk about that. For me, the big differentiation on the Paul Whelan stuff is that trade that's being asked for Vinnick, because people are acting as if this was an offer that was on the table for Victor Boot, and it just wasn't on the table from the Russians. They want to trade spy for spy, and that's not something that we could have gotten with this particular trade.
Okay. Let's go to Spartacus.
So we'll go over probably a few things in this. Do I think the trade was good? No, I think the trade was absolutely awful. I'm glad BRITNEY Griner is back. I'm happy for her family. If I was BRITNEY Griner's family, I would be ecstatic that she's back in the United States. But at the same point, do I believe this is a good trade? No. We traded a known and convicted, very, very powerful arms dealer to Russia, and we got back essentially a basketball player, citizen of the United States. That doesn't sound even to me. And on that point, if what could have made the trade a little bit better, and at this point I would start to hinge on it being worth it, is that we got Paul Whelan back, but that was obviously a failure. We did not get Paul Whelan back. Paul Whelan is still in jail in Russia over a non-corroborated report that Paul Whelan received a USB drive that contained names of intelligence officials. And who did we trade for these people? We traded Victor Bout. And with the claim that Trump turned down a Russia trade. So this is per Trump. I turned down a deal with Russia for a 1-on-1 swap of the so-called Merchant of Death for Paul Whelan, I wouldn't have made the deal for 100 people in exchange for someone that has killed untold numbers of people with his arms deals. So this is obviously Trump held Victor Bout as a very, very dangerous prisoner, and it was not willing to swap him to get back one American citizen or one American veteran back from Russia. And so that was the reasoning why Trump didn't take the trade. I would still say this trade's bad. I would be hinging on saying this trade's bad even if we got back Paul Whelan. But no, this trade has been absolutely awful considering we didn't even get Paul Whelan back.
Okay. And finally, JP.
I think the only way this makes sense is if they gave him cancer or something before they let him go. Because otherwise it makes zero sense. I don't think they should have done this. For the other guy, I don't think it makes sense to open up the door to negotiations like that. Even if that means we sacrifice an American, and even if it's true that she did nothing wrong, I don't think it matters at the end of the day. I think long term, this is a negative thing.
All right, so open to the panel.
Can I say one
Doesn't he
thing?
have stage 4 cancer already? Like we don't have
Does
to
he?
give it to him. He's got it.
No.
Yeah.
Actually,
I was researching that. I can't find anything on that.
So
can't find anything on it
I've
either.
heard that he has cancer from a person on the Intercept, but I haven't seen any articles about it. They did it on a video, right? So I've heard it from them, but I don't see any other articles on it. So it's hard for me to tell.
Yeah, if that, I mean, that's true. That could change the calculus. But I mean, what is about the thought here of like, yeah, we can negotiate, but at this point, we negotiated somebody who was an arms dealer who was like selling weapons to U.S. designated terrorist organizations that were going to use them against U.S. Soldiers, for somebody who committed a crime that is also illegal here. That's the thing, right? You can't go through U.S. airport security smuggling drugs or even legal weapons such as firearms. Like if you get, you try to go through security with that, they'll arrest you and put you in jail. So, I mean, my question is BRITNEY gonna go to is she gonna go to an American jail when she gets back here for quite openly breaking the law, or?
Dude, we both know that's not gonna happen.
No, she's not going to, because she wouldn't have broken the crime technically on American soil, right?
Right.
Like that gets
I know.
like the arc, but does
She
that
broke it
make
on
the-
Russian soil, and so she was
Yeah.
sentenced by a Russian
do you think
court.
It makes sense to,
Well,
do you
yeah,
think it makes
so-
sense to like charge her civilly for like some kind of fine or something? Not civilly.
No,
to
that
charge her,
would be a horrible fucking optics
because-
loss. That would destroy the whole
Sure,
point of the
but
trade.
think about this, right? So she fucks up. She does something stupid, and in response, we let go of this fucking Merchant of Death guy. Like that. Like it's the core of this was her fuck up, right? If she hadn't done this, there would have been no leverage. So I feel like there has to be some kind of consequence.
To Doobie's point, it's not like we haven't done that before. We traded for a army, someone who was in the army. He abandoned his post, and after he got home, he got tried by the military court and convicted of abandoning his post. So it's not like we haven't brought someone back from being wrongfully imprisoned elsewhere and then get tried inside the United States. That it's not like there's no precedent of that happening.
But he joined I can't remember which terrorist organization he joined, but he left his post to go join the terrorists and then got captured, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
There's also the
That's
issue
a
of,
little
other
different than
soldiers
Brittany
who went,
Griner joining to raise the red flag to fight the revolution against America. You know what I mean? It might be a little different,
Right.
you know?
And I think with that guy, there was also the issue. I think, if I remember correctly, there was the issue of they actually sent people to look for him, and some of those soldiers died. Right? It's because they were out looking.
Yeah. Thinking that he had been kidnapped when he had abandoned his post.
Right.
So I'm just curious, is this going to be, for the people who are in favor of this, is this going to start becoming the new norm where Americans who get arrested for bar fights or drunk driving or something, will we start trading international terrorists for them?
Do you think that we are dismissing on ignorance here? Because we did put the Russian travel advisory after she was captured. It was even after the outbreak of it was before the outbreak of the Ukrainian war that they're doing. So this is a normal thing for WNBA players to go over to Russia and play. It's many of them admit to this, because otherwise they make $130,000 a year, and then they have a whole off season where they can make money. So it's normalized that they're going over there to do this. But you know, so they're probably going to end up losing that revenue source if they follow the advisory, right? So I guess the question is like, are we going to get mad at people for just being dumb and probably not really thinking that hard about it if this is normalized within?
I think
them?
it's generally a bad idea.
Shit, you should be mad at them.
Well, wait, she was breaking
it's generally
the law.
a bad idea though to go to Russia. Like if you go to Russia as an
Especially
American
with
citizen,
drugs.
it's
Well,
generally a bad
yes.
idea. It's not. I don't really see any reason why I would go to Russia. It seems like a bad idea to me. Like there's no reason for me to go to Russia.
You know what it reminds me of? You know what it
Okay.
reminds me of? It reminds me of like these girls that like have these travel blogs, and they're like, how you can travel the world as a girl by yourself, and then like they'll go to like some fucking like Muslim country and like not wear a hijab and like get kidnapped or disappear or something. And it's like, I feel bad, but then I'm also like, but bitch, you were on the border of Pakistan hiking by yourself. Like, the fuck did you think was gonna happen? Like,
But
I feel bad,
Yeah,
but like
I don't
also,
think-
what the fuck are you doing?
But
I
to
don't
add
think
on,
that is an
to add
apt
on,
comparison at all.
Angel.
but
I
to
see
add
where
on to
this
that,
is going.
Scott, to add on to that, Scott, it obviously didn't make.
I want to hear from Angel. Angel.
Yeah, so I don't think that comparison is apt, and I also think that if you were to switch this situation up, and it was like LeBron James that accidentally left his vape cartridge in his suitcase or whatever the fuck, especially prior to the war breaking out, would this not be hugely different? The lucky thing for LeBron is he never actually has to go to Russia. As a women's WNBA basketball player, you have to go to these places to supplement your income.
False.
Wait, at 130 grand a year,
Brittney,
you don't have to supplement your income.
You don't.
So
have
wait,
to,
Okay,
but
obviously you don't
so
have to. You can stay home and you cannot get your income properly supplemented. But what are the alternatives to actually make anything like what you should be getting when you're an award-winning Olympian that should be making a huge income because it's your fucking life's work?
Let's make this very clear. It obviously doesn't make enough of a dent for Brittney Griner to care about it, because Brittney Griner has come out in the public and said, I'm not playing overseas. I will play WNBA inside of America. I'm not playing overseas. So if this really was a money situation, Brittney Griner would then have to no longer play in the WNBA. This obviously isn't a money situation because Brittney Griner is now saying she's declining to play overseas and she will not play overseas.
You would decline after this happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's
It's like a hugely traumatic
I would hope so.
But you're stating you're saying it's a money reason, right? So if it was a money reason, then she would decline to play in Russia. She's declined to play overseas at all. And
why
also, if it was a money situation, she would drop out of the WNBA because you wouldn't be making enough money. It's obviously not. These people need to go to Russia to make the amount of money that they need to survive. That's not it. And going to Russia is a bad idea. It's a bad idea in general.
Angel, can I just ask you like a real quick little question? Just a tiny little question. Can you name 2 WNBA teams without Google?
I don't fucking follow basketball. I don't give a fuck about it.
Yeah, I don't follow
Okay,
sports.
can anyone
I'm
here?
also not American.
I follow basketball, and I couldn't tell you one.
I couldn't tell you 2 NBA teams.
That's why
I
they
don't
don't
even
make
know
that much
fucking
money.
NBA teams. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like
Her
but
celebrity
here's
is
the thing. This is literally a teacher.
Gun to
getting a
your head,
summer
you
job,
could name a few
effectively, right?
fucking NBA teams.
Miami
No, I
Dolphins.
literally
I
And
don't
you're
fucking know.
Canadian.
It's the Indiana
Literally
Heat and
could.
Phoenix Mercury.
Phoenix.
No, wait, it's the Phoenix Suns.
It's Phoenix Mercury.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sprout's trying
LOL,
to
we
guess-
don't even know
Sprout's
what the
trying to get us killed by terrorists like Victor Bout. So, like, here's the thing, though, right? Like,
No, it's 2 WNBA teams.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Now
okay,
we
cool
know
for
them.
that.
It's brought
All
to
right.
light
Hey, now
just
we
how
know.
fucking
Yeah, now we
pathetic
know.
the situation of WNBA is.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
one
I-
watches. It's not entertaining.
This is
That's not
actually
the
like,
point.
this is
That's
a
not
large
the
publicity
point.
stunt for the WNBA. This is,
Yeah,
it's like the sub
definitely.
conspiracy
I mean-
theory going on here.
That is a good sub conspiracy theory, though.
Fucking-
Yeah, I really look at this. It's just like, yeah, dude. Like, end of the day, the only people this is going to benefit are people that are like, yeah, gonna go ahead and shit on this woman for just holding anti-American views. I think that's a large part of why people dislike this, is because Victor is super pro-Russia. Griner kind of hates America, but I guess she hates every other country more now because she's not going to go overseas. But this is really like,
I don't even think
Sparkus,
she
this is-
hates America. She just
That's-
didn't want to. Like, it was George Floyd. There was a bunch of shit going down, and it's like to do with obviously anthems being
I
played.
think she's unequivocally stated that she hates America before.
Okay,
So like,
well,
yeah, I'm gonna
she
give
probably
that
loves
one.
it now.
like, or at least like hates everything a little more.
Hearts and
But
minds.
This is her, but
Hearts
Sprout,
one at a
this
time.
is her
One
just
Russian
getting
prisoner at a time. We will make people love America.
See?
But Sprout,
That's
this
what you
is
gotta
literally
do.
just a teacher getting a summer job, right? And that's like, if you get offered a certain amount of money, everyone has a price. No matter what anyone says, everyone has a price. And I think that
Okay,
being
but
ignorant
risk
of
versus
that-
130
reward.
grand is not
Risk
very
versus
much
reward.
when you put your entire fucking life into this. And just imagine like how much she has to pay for.
Wait,
for her upkeep.
130 grand isn't very much when you put your
That's a
entire life in this.
garbage
Let's
ass
wait,
fucking
wait,
wage
one
for a
second, one second,
professional
one
athlete at the
second, one second,
Olympian level.
one
3
second, please,
seconds?
one
3
second.
seconds.
Thank you.
Let her go.
She
Let-
interrupted me.
No. Sorry. I meant to say let you go. I apologize.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right. So you're talking like 130 grand isn't very good for someone who's poured their entire life in this. There's people that go through education, go through 8 years of college, and still don't make 130 grand coming out of college. I highly disagree when someone's like 130 grand isn't enough. No, 130 grand is enough, and there's be a lot of people that would kill to make 130 grand a year. So no, that's bullshit on its face.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that would commit genocides for $500,000 a year.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, I just
That
don't
are
think
they're
it's
gonna do
analogous.
things. This is literally the WNBA. This is normalized that their players will go to Russia to play on the off season, right? Brittany Griner did a fuck up with the drugs, right? We know that, and then this whole thing came about, right? Do you think that WNBA players are probably going to be less likely to go there to begin with? Yes. So I think that, yeah, there's a change in the equation when this was a normalized behavior that didn't go punished, that likely there were people bringing carts and shit like that aside from Griner, right?
Can I ask you 2 questions real quick? Or I guess 1 question to 2 of you, to Angel and Rez. So I don't make 130,000, okay? But let's say like I took a few months to go to like teach law in China or some, American law in China or some dumb shit. And I got busted in China with like marijuana. And in China, like the death penalty's on the table for smuggling drugs. Would you trade Victor Bout for me?
Yes, 100%, unequivocally.
Like,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
question.
of course.
What if I got in a bar fight? What if I got in a bar fight? Then would you trade Victor Bout for me?
Yeah, I would actually be more likely to do that because you've shown your willingness to go ahead and engage in physical combat, which makes me think more of you.
With the
By the way-
Chinese. That's pretty
Well, no, because like you're what? Soy milk. So like that's the thing. It's like it makes you a little bit like stronger. It shows you the strength of your bones. Did you win the bar fight or did you lose?
He lost epically.
It's classified information. We can't.
All right. Well, okay, dude. You got to win the fight. Like win the fight, it'll be better. But honestly, I'll give you heart. You got that American heart. So yeah, it's still regardless.
So hold on, I wanted to address this because you put this for Lactoid previously about like the bar fight. Well, like, one, should we be having political calculations as to who we get out or who we don't? Like, if it's an American who's unjustly, I think it's very important, imprisoned, then like maybe not, right? Maybe it's just like, oh, we have an individual and we got to go get him because we're Americans, right? Maybe that's just a value call that we should have. But also, like, there are Americans like who are unfairly imprisoned around the world, like right now, and we don't know their names, right? Because most of them aren't.
Because they're in FBI black sites.
Really good.
That's
one.
different, Scott. It's different.
It's different. It's totally different, man.
It
But yeah. So you don't know who these people are, and so they have no notoriety. That doesn't mean the State Department isn't actually working on them, right? Like working to get them out. This is a thing that our State Department does. Like you can, when you travel, you can actually register with the State Department and say like, this is where I'm going and for how long, right? I've done that before as well, right? In case something happens, they can actually look into it. We have a State Department that does exactly this stuff. I think that there is a clear difference between the normal like injustices that happen to people who are traveling around and this situation. This situation, right, isn't you, Lactoid. I love you, but you're a nobody, right? This isn't nobody Lactoid getting in a bar fight. This is a person with
The Brittany Griner.
It was some level of
The
notoriety.
Brittney Griner. Wow. Holy
some
shit.
level of notoriety, and then, but one way or the other, she got media attention, right? Like
Right.
maybe if
The
she
market-
had no
The market has
media
determined
attention.
that her value is 130K a year. That's how
Yeah.
much of a somebody.
Thank
she
you for
is.
bringing it back.
No,
to
wait.
that,
The market also determined that, I guess, like, she is more valuable being a celebrity for prisoner swaps, right? So
Well,
that's
yeah,
a hidden, that's a hidden perk, by the way, in her salary.
Give you
It's
like
not
2 or
reflected
3
in the
years.
130K.
Give her 2 or
But
3 years.
let's
You'll
also
be worth more
let's
than
also
Brittney
be
Griner.
clear here. It is almost guaranteed there was some sort of actuarial analysis about the damage that Victor was going to do to the United States versus Brittney Griner that was done by Department of Defense officials that know math way better than I do, right? There's probably actuarial analysis that we don't understand towards geopolitical means, but I think ultimately it kind of sits there. I really think Victor is just going to be a propaganda piece who's likely, he built his entire career, the 8 years that he was being sought after by NATO allies, Eurozone allies, and whatnot. They had one picture of the guy. We got the intel album probably that we need. We know what he looks like. He is not going to have the efficacy to do what he was doing before as well. Like, what is he going to do? He's going to smuggle weapons into Russia, and that's going to be somewhat difficult for NATO.
But that wasn't what he ever did. His specialty was smuggling weapons
out of Russia. And Russia
specifically Soviet era weapons that are now like over 40 years old, and whatever stashes he had when he was caught are now 15 years old, if they exist at all anymore, if anybody else hasn't gotten to them. And also, he's been in there for 15 years. He was due to be released in about 5 or 6 years.
Can we delete that, please?
To making this trade now, then you might also object to releasing him at the end of his date.
Can we get a delete on that last
Well,
message?
it would be 10 years,
we
right?
would have done. No, because
I got 25, right?
15% off for good behavior. So he would get. He's been 15 in.
Do foreign nationals get 15% off for good behavior?
Differences.
I don't know if that works with like Interpol.
I don't think that applies
it
to foreign
might. It
nationals.
might. I actually don't know.
That's what all the reporting's been, is that he was going
Okay.
to be released in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. But yeah, so
If he was that dangerous, he'd been Gitmo.
I think Rez was saying a lot of truth there, and I think that his how dangerous he is has been like overblown and in general, but like a danger to Americans. Now I could be proven wrong about this, right? So I'm willing to.
I'm with you. I think they may have exaggerated a little bit how dangerous the quote merchant of death was.
Yeah, that sounds like a media sensation, right?
I don't know about that, because if we look at like what he got caught for, the FARC tap that they did, he was literally willing to supply 30,000 AKs, 1,000 tons of C4, like something like 300 or 400 UAVs, like a lot of actual real
and ground air missiles too.
Yeah,
to the point that he could have an actual standing army that could be built off that larger than some armies of the world.
He was an arms dealer, right? And so he dealt arms. I'm saying like the risk to the homeland, and the way that they have like kind of conceptualized this in the media. I don't think that I think from the country that is the #1 arms dealer, right? Where so much of our arms flows out, right? And ends up in the hands of our enemies, right? This happens very.
What do you mean?
Know this?
What do you mean?
Because we left them in Afghanistan.
We literally what do you mean? The Pentagon literally makes $100 million deals all the time to sell them to our enemies.
Exactly.
Exactly. Picatinny deal,
right?
Yeah.
Right? Like we just sold like $350 million worth of arms. Now, granted, if you want to talk about certain types of munitions that we sell to Turkey and then they end up in our enemies, like that's a thing. Right, like like Al Nusra and shit, but like in terms of like like hey guys, we have a rebel group and like they're gonna topple this dictator and we're gonna give them hundreds of millions of dollars worth of munitions, and like we're pretty certain that this rebel group isn't gonna be a terrorist organization, and then 3 years later it's like, oh fuck, all right, so our bad again. We've only been doing this since the 1970s.
Yeah,
I think there's a difference here actually, because in one you're actually like trying to, at least the intent is to like accomplish some kind of noble purpose. The other one, like he was specifically selling it to like people who We had the intent to use it on American.
Charlie Wilson's war, you could make that argument. Like post that, right? Like the intent is to fuck up the region.
No,
but that's not.
No, wait.
I think that Lactoid, even what you're saying here, his intent was to fuck up America. Like, I think his intent was to stir, conflict over the world. Yes, when he went into the Colombia deal, he literally said, yes, the Americans are both your and our enemy, or something like that. I'm sorry, as a salesman, you're going to try to go ahead and find some sort of commonality with somebody that you're pitching a sale to, right? To begin with. It's just an added benefit, if nothing else.
But nobody's disputing the shit that he did in the past, or that he was deserved the sentence he got, or any of that. The question is his ability to continue to do that in the future. That's the question. And again, like, his contacts are dried up. He was selling outdated munitions to begin with. That stuff is not there.
You have to look at where he's selling.
The stuff's not on offer anymore. If anything, Russia is more desperate to bring that stuff back in if they could.
You have to look at where he was selling this, though. He was selling firearms in Africa and turning what would be a mild civil war into a very, very dangerous civil war, selling them guns and armory and stuff like that, and being able to arm both sides of the war at the same time, and causing a massive conflict where a massive conflict should have never existed.
But when the intelligence agencies are doing this risk analysis, they're not, assuming that there's a time machine. They're looking at what he can do in the future, not at what he's done in the past, because he's already been convicted of that. And if there's a risk to letting him go, like let's say he did have stage 4 cancer, like some of the rumors were, then you wouldn't then say, well, because of the stuff he did in the past, that's the reason why you can't make the trade. No, people make these trades all the time when you've crossed that bridge and the danger is now behind you. That's when you can then make those trades. And that's what that risk analysis is all about.
True, Donkey Draymond.
It's about assessing risk in the future, not...
He's probably smuggling in shit to prison.
So two things. The first thing is to address, I guess,
same context.
Rez and Scott's point. I think the difference here, like looking at it at a micro level, would be if I sell a gun to somebody who says, I'm going to shoot like your friend over there. I'm going to do it. Like, sell me the gun. Okay, that's one thing. And then the other thing is, like, I'm going to sell a gun to somebody who is like a friend of mine, in an actual alliance with me in like the geopolitical sense, like on a personal level. Like Turkey is part of NATO, right? You're selling it to a friend, and like the friend, and you say like, okay, friend, like, don't do something bad with this gun. And they say, I'm not going to do it. And then like they go afterwards and they give it to somebody who they think is good. Don't do anything bad with it. I'm not going to do anything bad with it. And then they like that third person removed or something does something wrong with it. I think there's a difference when we're talking about like in terms of punishment, just because of the proximate cause there, right? The proximity between your action and the intent of killing American soldiers compared to some effect down the line. And to that effect down the line, Aiko, I'm curious. I don't know if they can do that. I don't know actually why they couldn't do it now that it's already happened. Why they couldn't release the sort of like actuarial, like, well, I guess maybe then it gives an insight into how we think about our prisoner trades in the future. Maybe we don't want to do that, but
maybe so.
I'm skeptical that even I agree with you that his global influence is probably diminished. But in terms of like, we suspect that he has some ties to the Russian intelligence. That he has lines of communication, at least perhaps still in some areas of the world, especially areas that are not U.S. friendly. Perhaps the Russian government kind of sees him as a useful asset in that regards. I don't know, but I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that he is more geostrategically useful than BRITNEY Griner is.
I think if we're being honest about it, right? Let's just set aside like the let's assume that neither of them have any like meaningful ability to individually affect change, right? That's just a little thought experiment, right? BRITNEY Griner isn't going to change anything in the world by being back, other than the Pyrrhic victory, right? And the same for Victor Bout, right? If we assume that for a moment, I think Reverie is kind of right here. Whereas, the Biden administration doesn't really give a fuck what conservatives think about this trade, right? They're going to be mad. They're never going to vote for any of their people anyways. So like, what does it look like to the normie, and what does it look like to people who vote Democrat? And I think the people who vote Democrat especially, and maybe to many normies, they're happy that the administration secured a deal to get an American citizen back, right, to fight this injustice. And that even, and like, I also don't buy this idea that like her being anti-American matters to the Democrats, because the Democrats fucking love that fucking like silver spoon socialist argumentation shit all the damn time. Like, so I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing for them. And to Russia in the current conflict and situation, right, to be able to sell to their people, even if this guy doesn't do anything, that America is weak and that America gives us back our people, and that we still have the ability to like strong arm America to give us back our people and to like keep in the fight, you know, kind of like patriotically in this Ukrainian conflict. I think it's a perfect victory for them symbolically too. So like, I think maybe like stop thinking about it from the domain of like what is good for America and like the parties involved in what it is that they want, right? And I think the parties involved when we're talking about the Biden administration don't really give a fuck what a third of this country believes. Why would they? And I would think it would be the same for Trump, right? When Trump refused the deal, right? Even though there might be like some liberals that are like, dude, we got to get one of our people back. Like Trump, no, he's like appealing to his base, which is like, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Fuck these people. We're not doing that. Like there's an ideological difference.
Yeah, politically it makes sense. Yeah, I would never argue that it doesn't make political difference or a political. You know, it makes political sense for Biden to do this, right? Obviously,
right.
And I think
strategically.
And I think the race and the gender component has something to do with it. I think the race and the gender component had something to do with it as well.
It has propaganda value.
Yeah, the fact that it was a black lesbian and they were so excited that it was a black lesbian, you know, obviously.
Yes. But propaganda is strategic as well. Like there's value for both sides in what it is that they're getting back, mostly domestically. In the case of both of them, it's a problem. It's a strategic advantage in terms of domestic politics.
Yeah, I think that it also serves the longer arm of what is our State Department's policy, which again, you know, for Trump's credit, he was negotiating, right? We're actually going to be negotiating later this week. There are already apparently scheduled talks to continue to try to bring back Paul Whelan, which I fully and wholeheartedly support, right? There are ways that we can do this. And I think the longer arm of the State Department isn't necessarily just within one party. I think it is just our general, I don't know, debt that I think that the state owes to the individual. If a state has to exist, it owes the individual something, that if that individual puts in something for the reciprocals.
So Reservoir, say we capture and try a Russian for war crimes in Ukraine. Right?
Yes.
We capture and try Russian for war crimes in Ukraine. What's going to stop Russia's thought process of, oh, we'll just make up some bullshit charges on a few American citizens and we'll make sure we get them back?
Well, I think that that's the point of like why we have to go ahead and put some more enforcement arms onto our our not travel advisories that we place on Americans, right? So when we went ahead and put the travel advisory into effect in Russia on October 4th of this year, right? After that point, like, yeah, maybe just be like, hey guys, why don't you get out of here and make it like a little bit less hard. I still think we should bring those people back, but maybe after we go ahead, if we go ahead and put the laws into place where we can try people who are effectively doing a harm to America, you know, like through our geopolitical means. Yeah, I think that we could go ahead and encode this into law, but we have to encode that into law to go ahead and actually try them in the first place, because I think that at the end of the day, I don't think there's anything necessarily illegal about it. I originally was going to ask Lactoid, are U.S. citizens under federal jurisdiction worldwide? Because I honestly don't actually know that. Because
somewhat.
I think with the
they actually are somewhat.
Yeah, I really don't know anything about that. Was interested to pick your brain.
Does it depend on the severity of the crime?
Yeah, it depends on certain crimes.
Yeah,
like,
I think like
sex trafficking is like the big one, where like if you're traveling to other countries, that shit, like the American government, even if you're not on U.S. soil, they will still come after you. The U.S. government actually is different from a lot of governments in that it's somewhat unique in how much it enforces its law on its citizens outside of its country. Almost no other country does it. You know, even the like pretty strict authoritarian ones don't do it to the extent that we do, right? You get taxed on income that you make in a different country, that you pay taxes to them, and then you have to pay taxes to us as well. It's pretty crazy. But I don't know. I mean, she did break the law there, right? I mean, I feel like people just kind of gloss over that. Like, I don't know.
Hold on. Let's. Okay. If this was the 1940s, right, and I do what I like to do and put my penis on a white woman, right? Like I'd be breaking the law in certain jurisdictions, right? And you can say, well,
it's an illegitimate
Prime
law.
did break the law. Yeah, Prime did break the law. He had made sweet love to that beautiful white woman. And so, should someone take action? Yeah, but so there's an illegitimate law, so there's that, right? But there's also maybe a legitimate law, which I don't think drugs are, anti-drug laws are, but let's say that is a illegitimate law. Like we can say that the punishment might be illegitimate, right? So if it's like you said in China, where let's say she did the exact same thing, like well,
A lot of Asian countries.
I think it makes sense
Because of the opium war.
I think it makes sense to like put pressure on them to release somebody like that, like you in that example. But I don't think that you should be doing it in a way that makes you look weak. And I think this makes the United States look weak, like Scott laid out earlier. I think it makes a lot more sense to pressure them to release them if that's what's going to happen. And if they don't, then we accept it as a loss. Right?
How do you pressure them? Can you provide an example?
Sanctions, very, very harsh sanctions. I'm sure there's assets
Or
in
a
the
single
U.S. that
person.
belong to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's further. Then this is if they're
But
like
we're already
refusing to
maxed
release
out
a
on
U.S.
sanctions.
citizen. They're refusing to release like a U.S. citizen that has been like snatched up on some bullshit charges, or if they arrested you for putting your dick in somebody, right? Say, hey, we think this is unjust. You need to release our citizen back to us. And if they don't, then we can come up with some creative ways to force them to. And if they don't do it, if they dig in their heels and they say, hey, we're not going to do that, well then shit, you take it as a loss. Prime, you're going to stay in there forever. I'm sorry. Brittany, you're going to stay in there forever. Mr. Whelan, you're never coming home. It is what it is, right? We add this to the book of grudges that we have against Russia.
Right, but Doobie, like the problem, and why I keep bringing it up that it's illegal is because it is illegal. And look at the precedent, illegal in America, and look at what kind of precedent that sets, right? Which is our citizens commit crimes in your country that we also consider crimes, and we don't think they should get punishment for it if they do it over there.
Yeah,
but
it's really
not
illegal.
if they do it over
No.
here, though.
That's not necessarily true. Like we have certain precedents. Like this used to get talked a lot about in terms of diplomatic immunity, which is to say, if you violate a law in somebody's country, the agreement is you will be tried in your home country in those cases for that same crime.
If you're a diplomat,
but that's what I'm saying. But this is the theory that's in operation when you're having these kinds of discussions.
right? But the country agrees to that ahead of
So,
time,
yeah.
and they get tried in their own country, which is not happening here.
Yeah, but if you were to but it would happen, except for the fact that she's already faced a punishment that goes beyond what she would have gotten in the United States.
But
So
yeah,
to
that's probably
like
true.
double dip and say you have to pay that price again doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
What about somebody who, because you know how a lot of countries in the Middle East and Asia and elsewhere, it's like illegal to be gay or like a same-sex union, or not even a union, but just relationship or any activity at all is gay or is illegal, criminal.
Right.
What do you think? Like, if somebody, say, like, let's take Brittany Griner or somebody similar, goes there for like sports or work or whatever, and then get charged with being gay, and then now they're, a prisoner. Do you think the situation is different? Like, and how so? Because
Well,
the nature of the crime is so.
Well, it's different in the sense that that's not illegal here,
That's
right?
relevant
What
to
what
the
she was
Kevin
doing, what she was doing in Russia, was legal there and was legal here, or illegal here.
Do we
right?
have
You
enough
can't do it.
details on the actual crime? Like, was it just because it's?
She had weed in a
She had
pen.
She had 1 gram of resin within a pen that she was caught on the 18th of February with and detained, and then
There was a
announced
whole
detainment on
gram?
the
Is it legal?
It was
Not a
a
whole
gram.
Because
Well,
I read
there's all-
something that said residue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it was
think
no.
gram
It
of
was
resin.
resin. It was resin.
It was
Resin.
a gram of
Yeah.
resin.
Yeah. So
I'm
that
the
goes
resin.
along. That goes a long way. And
It's
No,
in my
and
name.
there's modifiers in terms of like international crime, for example. Like if you are internationally smuggling some drugs, that typically has higher penalties than like if I bring a bag of weed to my friend's house down the street.
But keep in mind, she was being charged with trafficking, which
Right.
bringing in 2/3 of 1 gram of resin, which she says was a mistake or an afterthought or whatever. That's not enough. Like, exactly how much distribution are you going to make off of an amount?
Which again makes the punishment completely unfair.
Hey, she needs the money, right?
We all know Russia
only
is
130
really
grand.
Fun. Dude, it's
By the way,
Russia's
LeBron
really
makes
against
over
fun
40
parties.
million a year.
No,
Okay, well, hold on, wait. Let's have Brittany and
This is
LeBron
subjective value.
like do 1-on-1 then. Let's see who wins.
Okay, hold on,
Who's
hold on.
worth the
Two
40
things,
million?
okay,
Who's
two
not?
things. One, Doobie, Doobie, I think saying that, like, well, we're not going to trade an individual person, right? A prisoner who has been out of the game of arms dealing for 15 years. We're not going to trade them. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to levy sanctions against the country for a single person. I asked you that, for a single person, and which means that we damage our own ability to trade with them. We're going to sacrifice all that money and the diplomatic interactions that we could be having for that single person, rather than trading out a has-been arms dealer. Like, I don't see how that calculus works at all.
Prime, would you see it differently though if you think that would Russia be tempted to do that again? Right. So say that one person went over there and we applied like a shit ton of sanctions. We're like, let that person go, or otherwise we are going to just economically fuck you. And then they're like, they experience economic distress. They're like, fine, here's your guy. Do you think they'll be tempted to try that one again? Versus, oh, we got back our guy. Congratulations, everyone. Yada, yada, yada. Oh, no, another Russian went to jail. Well, they just kidnap another American citizen and charge us with bullshit charges.
American citizens on bullshit charges. They'd make sure that it was something serious, something they could prove, etc. Right? They wouldn't do for bullshit charges
Under
anymore.
normal circumstances, I would agree. Here's the problem with this: is that because of the invasion, we're already sanctioning him up the yazoo, and any invasions that are left on the table require coordination with basically the rest of the world. Otherwise, they're ineffective. And so you can't really like introduce new sanctions.
Well, I'm using this theoretically. I'm using this theoretically, saying outside the Ukraine war.
But in this case, if what you have to offer then is backing off already existing sanctions in exchange for Grindr, that again would make you look weak, I think, because you'd say, "Oh, well, we're sanctioning you."
Yeah, I tried not to have this debate.
Oh, but because you captured one of our people.
Yeah,
like, that's
why are we doing this after Wick does it?
I
wouldn't
wouldn't
talk about the Twitter files.
Back off
we'll see what happens.
on any of the sanctions with regards to the war in exchange for someone like that, because that would just send the message that all we have to do is arrest a whole bunch of Americans and we can like win this war.
So, the other thing, well, Doobie, if you want to respond to me directly, then you can. I also have something that you'll Actoid about, and maybe Scott as well. And Scott, you can go afterwards too. Doobie?
My position is basically what Spartacus laid out, right? That I think this might encourage them to continue this kind of stuff going forward. I think that the better thing to do would be to discourage it. If we can't do sanctions at this particular time, then we find some other reason. If we can't find any way to do it right now, then we just don't. Then we accept that they kidnap this person, charge them with some bullshit. It is what it is, right? Add it to the list of grudges, like I said earlier. I don't think it makes any sense to weaken ourselves on the national stage in the eyes of our enemies and in the eyes of our own people for this person or any other person.
You would also do this for sanctions, right? For bar fight lactoid. You would levy sanctions.
Wait,
against...
no, hold on. So there's a distinction. So if a citizen genuinely broke a law, right? Like, so let's say lactoid, there's video of him causing a fight, beating the shit out of somebody, stomping their face. Well, then shit. Hey, you went to another country, acted like an idiot, so now you stay in prison. Right? I'm talking like bullshit charges, right? So if they genuinely like just made some shit up, they couldn't prove it, etc. Then that's the issue. Now, I have no issue with them charging Americans with like actual crime.
Okay, I'll have to jump in on that.
That's what happened here.
But I'll lactoid. And to Scott, it seems like you guys being preeminent capitalists yourselves, it's weird. It's weird.
I was about to tie it in afterwards, but go ahead.
It's weird that you guys are like shaming this woman for like making money, for understanding that there's a market there's a market for her skills, right? You're saying that, well, she's only making $130,000, then she goes to Russia? Like what's the decision making in that? The decision making is making more money. That's what it is, right?
Wasn't that Spartacus's argument though?
Yeah,
I'm
not shaming her. Like, no, that has nothing to do with capitalism.
Resi, your blowtorch is louder than Prime.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't know what that sound was. But in any case, like Lactoid, you're saying, well, yeah, why? She's made $130,000. She can make a lot more in Russia, right? Yes, it is indeed more than most people on this panel make, right? But she can make more. She doesn't make on parity what the male NBA players make, right? And you can say, well, the market doesn't allow for that, but the market does allow for it in Russia. You have like oligarchs who like buy these teams and just like as a status symbol, they like bring in these Americans. The Russian people love to come and watch them, right? So yeah, you can make a shit ton of money doing that. Why wouldn't she do this, right?
What
it makes perfect sense.
Can you make an argument? Because what you're saying is it makes sense because money exists, right? I don't understand what the hell you're saying. It has nothing to do with anything.
Over 40 million, and she's not even $250,000.
Because she's not worth $1 million.
Better. Yeah. Okay.
Can I add one other
doesn't make
element
any
to
sense.
this argument?
The point of bringing it up though is should people really have to go to Russia?
No, this doesn't make sense. This sounds like people are just saying capitalism and attaching it and being like, see why you're wrong. Like there's no argument here.
Isn't it fucked though that you have to go to countries that potentially could do this to you?
This bitch does not have to go to fucking Russia.
Okay,
she makes $130,000.
I didn't say have to, and you replace it with like should.
Sorry.
Financially?
No, what?
Sorry,
there's an incentive. Listen. There's a financial incentive.
I hear the argument.
There's a financial incentive to go to Russia because you can make more money, right? There's also drawbacks in the decision you make, which is that you might get arrested for some dumb shit, and then you should be careful when you go to another fucking country with a travel advisory warning that you don't accidentally bring fucking drugs over.
That came
this
after.
dumb pothead.
The travel advisory wasn't out yet.
But
okay, regardless, it's not like it's a secret especially someone that goes there regularly and has a bunch of other people like, hey, there's certain things when you go to another country you got to be careful about.
It's not regardless. No, she made a stupid mistake. That's and back to her. I want to hear what you have to say. She made a stupid mistake. That's absolutely the case, right? But that's separate from the idea of going to Russia and making money. It's like, well, she makes.
But you're connecting it, and I don't understand. I'm confused. I'm legitimately
one
confused
element?
what your argument is.
What's your one element? Then I
just the one element, just real quick, because this has come up several times, and I've been wanting to interject this just when we hit that part of the topic, and that is we used to debate this all the time with like the NFL minimum wage. The argument wasn't that you can't live on a certain amount of money; it was that in an athletic career you only have so many prime years of money making to go, and your earning potential drops considerably after that, and so you have to make as much money during your prime athletic years as possible, and that's one of the things that I think incentivizes people to travel.
Okay, I want to say a couple things. So I guess to start out with, this is a hot take or whatever, but the reason LeBron James makes way more than Brittney Griner is the same reason why Brittney Griner makes way more than like a high school basketball team, which makes way more than like elementary school basketball team, which is that ultimately, like in terms of skill level and ability level, they're not even close. Ultimately, these leagues just exist to fill a particular market. It's not like this market is any more valuable. This market's actually tremendously less valuable. So it's less valuable market, and they're simply not as skilled. Right. So if the argument is, well, they should just get paid equally. Well, you put LeBron James against Brittney Griner as much as you want, as many games as you want, it'll be not even close. And I understand that when you're not as good at your job, and so you can't make as much money at your job, you perhaps might need to supplement your income with other work. And if part of that work is going to risky areas and engaging in like risky activity, then like you accept and consent to that risk. In the same way that like if I went to go like coal mining, I can make a bunch of money, I guess, but there's also like a risk of black lung associated with that. And you could say, well, she never like the travel advisory was afterwards, so she didn't actually have like a reasonable belief to be worried. That's fair. And I actually agree that if she was arrested on trumped up charges, and like then they put the travel advisory afterwards, then I'd like actually be almost in 100% agreement with Rez. The problem is that's actually not what happened here. Again, people are forgetting the fact that she either had or should have had in advance knowledge that drugs are illegal in Russia, and that importing drugs into Russia is a criminal offense for which there is massive penalties. That was the case before the war in Ukraine. That's been the case for decades. You can't do that. She knew that, and then she committed the crime, right?
I want to push back a little bit.
And that was a risk that she accepted.
I want to push back a little bit because I don't want to go as far as Lactoid. It's an unjustifiable prosecution for a victimless crime. Whether it occurs in America or occurs in Russia, but what I'm simply saying
ultimately
is that it's stupid, right, to go to Russia and not be really careful about like what you have packed in your fucking bags. I don't know how many times you go to the airport and there are signs and everything everywhere being like, did you pack your own bag? Right? You want to make sure that you don't bring shit that's illegal to another fucking country. Like, it's stupid. However, I don't want to say that she consented to like the unjustifiable fucked up thing that the Russian government does to its own citizens. Just like no one here in America consented to being locked up in a country that has like fucking an overwhelming majority of the world's, an overwhelming minority of the world's prisoners because of victimless crimes. Right? Like, so I don't want to go quite as far as what you're saying.
So I get that. I want to address that because I get that element. And ultimately I agree with you. Like, it's an unjustified crime. But I actually do think that when I'm where I'm born, when I'm where I'm at, or like in the same fucking country, in the same legal system, I think that like I have way more of like a, argument when it comes to like nullifying certain laws, when it comes to saying like, I don't want, like it's unjust when this happens to me. But when you're not financially pressed to, when you're making enough money to survive, and you actively take on the risk, even of like, again, it would be similar to like, one person complaining about like being like blown up here compared to like going to like southern Afghanistan, like into the heart of like the Taliban and then getting blown up. It's wrong to get blown up. At the same time, when you like a reporter or something and you fly in a plane to the like that controlled area of Afghanistan and like you get blown up or something, yeah, it's a tragedy, but there is a more of an acceptance of risk there that isn't the case in America.
But Lactoid, you said, Lactoid, you said if it was a trumped up charge, then you could understand it. But it was a trumped up charge, right? She was not guilty of trafficking. No one in their right mind is going to say well, of course, yes, because she wasn't getting a fair trial.
Yeah, a lot of people plead guilty to lots of things.
Yeah.
But
the fact is, two-thirds of a gram is not evidence of trafficking. Like, if that was trumped up, if she was charged with possession, that'd be a different story. Then I would say, yeah, that's a legitimate charge. I might disagree with whatever sentence she got. I might not think it's worth a gulag, but I would agree that she violated the law. She did not violate the trafficking law in Russia. I'm not an expert on Russian law. I don't know if they differentiate between like traffic. Like, it could be that trafficking could just simply be like the minimum like required elements are bringing drugs into the country.
He's only an expert on Canadian law. So like
she was charged and pled guilty to smuggling.
And she did.
Which she did.
She did smuggle.
Okay.
That's not smuggling.
That is smuggling.
That's kind of
You're telling me if you're
smuggling,
walking
but it's
down
not
the street,
trafficking.
Here, I'm telling you, like, if you stuck like a little bit of weed up your butt,
The illegal movement of goods into or out of a country.
That would be smuggling. Yeah,
that's smuggling.
The American authorities would arrest you for smuggling, not even the Russian ones. So doesn't that seem like a little bit unfair? like I do it in America, I go to prison, but when BRITNEY Griner does it in Russia, they trade a weapons manufacturer.
No, you would never get that kind of
a weapons reseller, not
weapons
a manufacturer.
reseller. Yeah, my bad.
He was selling 91 era Soviet weapons.
Yeah,
so
your gain just like went off
Sorry, I had the soul of Haas entered me for a moment. Is that better?
It's like the permanent Vosh emphasis
Go
voice.
back. Keep working on that. But okay, Lactoid and Scott, you were trying to understand why I brought up the point that I did. Because I already acknowledged, so I'm sorry for hitting my mic. I already acknowledged that this was a dumb thing that she did, right? Mm-hmm. That's separate, that's built in, okay? Don't do that, all right? Don't go to any country and break their laws, right? When you're in foreign soil, it makes things very difficult for you. Don't do that. Okay, but I'm talking about specifically the capitalist endeavor that she engaged in. Well, the money making endeavor, where she decided that yes, she's not destitute, making $130,000 here, right? Like you said, it wasn't for survival needs, but there was an opportunity to make money in a legitimate business in an industry, being the American to Russia like basketball industry, that has been safe and proven, right? And that's
not what we have an issue
it just
with.
got proven.
Yeah, but like
not
nobody's
safe.
criticizing.
Wait. I don't have an issue with going to make money. I have an issue with you committed a crime. That is also a crime.
But no. You kept saying, well, she was making $130,000. You kept bringing
that was in response to somebody in the panel saying, well, she had to go because of how poor she was.
Yeah. People were saying she had to go, and I'm like, no,
yeah, she didn't have to go.
Okay,
But
to be clear,
it's
we
fine that she went. Just don't bring drugs.
It's unfortunate that they make so little that they
And
need
pick a
to
different
do
career.
things like that. Yeah, pick a different career, right?
Go into
Hold on,
coding.
but wait 1 second. But like even let's say she were like actually like poor or she had like a massive bill, so she had to go to Russia, right? There's no
I'm
other
a
option.
libertarian. No argument
Then-
there.
No, well, hold on. Then
Fuck your environmental
even then,
exploitation.
even then, right? So even then, I don't think it's excusable for her to go to Russia, even though she's been forced to go there somehow to take some fucking weed with her. Why
No,
the fuck would
that
she
we
do
all
that?
know that was.
It's
the
expensive.
Well, that's what
thing
we're
that happened.
criticizing her for.
Well,
She's spent
but
that
we
on
all
food.
agree
Yeah, we're
on
not
that.
criticizing her for wanting to make money. Like, make
Well,
money.
some of
That's-
us were.
No, it's fine that she wants to make money. Just don't
Yeah, but
bring
you
drugs.
even said that it was because she's not as good at her job, but she's actually tremendous at her job. She's a gold medalist.
No, that's why she makes less money, because she's not. Look, this
She
is like the super
you're
hot take.
comparing
This is a
her
fact of
to
reality.
something that's irrelevant.
She's not as good as LeBron James.
What? No, you're
She's not
comparing her to
nearly as
something
good as
that's
LeBron
relevant,
James.
which is men in basketball. Like
Yeah,
you're the one
it-
throwing out random.
Yeah, but so
irrelevant
don't
shit.
you think it would be a good idea to maybe incentivize like better payment within America so that women
Then get better.
$130,000 is good enough payment for me.
No, it's a
If you
bad
make
idea.
130
No.
grand,
That's bullshit, right?
What's
not
next? The
fighting
Little
for
Leagues?
your
If you can
payment.
make 5 to 10 times as much in another country, don't bullshit me to say, oh, that's good enough for me. Little old Sprouticus, right? He'd be
Yeah,
happy
you
with
have-
6 figures, right?
you
When he
have
Because
no
comes
that
idea what it's
market's
like.
bigger.
set 7 figures. Like if you
if
could,
you
if I
want
said-
to
The
get
Ru- the Russians aren't
if you
doing
want
it. The Russians are
Yeah,
doing it like on a gender parody, like woke ideology. Oh, we got to give her more money because like
I
women's
wouldn't
equality.
mind.
That's
I
not what
wouldn't
the
mind if
Russians
they-
are doing.
I wouldn't mind
Yeah,
if she was
I
going to
know.
play basketball in Europe. I wouldn't mind. I would think there's no
So let's
issues
look
playing
at-
basketball in
You wouldn't
Europe.
mind if
She
she was
went
gonna-
to
So let's-
Russia.
You
So
were,
let's
and you
look
didn't
at-
care before.
let's look at a
You-
real world
this was the thing
example.
that was happening, and you didn't give a shit before, right? It's not like you were
Let's-
thinking, oh yeah,
No, I don't think.
these-
I don't think we should have gone to
basketball
Russia. I
players are
don't
putting
think
themselves in
WNBA
danger.
should go to Russia. This has
They
never been a
weren't putting
topic. You've never
themselves
heard.
in
You've never
danger
heard
for
my
going
points
there.
on this.
they weren't putting themselves in danger going to Russia. That
They
wasn't
were.
a thing.
Is
That-
this
no,
the
that-
correct
no, it
math? Who's
wasn't.
good at
It's
math here?
unbelievable. Like how-
338,000 times more? Is that
Russia
correct?
wrongfully detained the Marine in 2018.
million
You're telling me they didn't know it was a risk to be wrongfully
if I
detained?
am making, if I am, like you said, like she didn't need to go there, right? Right. If I am making a minimum wage, I'm making a minimum wage, and my housing is secure, right? I'm working 3 jobs to make ends meet, but everything's secure. I'm not dying. I'm not starving, right? But I have the opportunity to make 7 figures. I have the opportunity to make 7 figures in Russia, right? Like, is that truly the case that I don't need to do that? I'm not using an extreme example, obviously, right? But that I don't need to go over to this foreign country and do through legitimate means make that money. Like this idea of like what you need to do in a capitalist society where your survival is based on like how much money you make, and your status and your happiness is all based on this. Like it's pretty spurious to me.
I would not go to Russia. I would not go to Russia for 7
You're not
figures.
making like
I
a
would not go to
solid
Russia for 8
argument. Like,
figures.
this isn't-
Hold on.
LeBron makes
it's just- I don't like that.
338
Let's
times more than her.
All right,
Okay,
back to it,
so
back to it.
so again, I think it's fine if you want to make money. That was never my criticism of her. If you want to say like, what if you don't need? Yeah, I don't think you would need to in that regard either. Like, if making 6 to 7 figures would be awesome. Like, yeah, you'd want to do that. It wouldn't be like a need, but like to some extent,
Let's
like in
reverse
terms of like your
this. Let's
your
reverse
character-
this.
Hold on,
Okay?
sorry, let Twit finish his
well, but
point.
like in terms of like your character thing, like I don't know, perhaps logically, yeah, it's not a need, but if you're making minimum wage, like the poorer you are, like the more sympathetic I am to your situation. Where like if you're actually like trying to make ends meet, like more like an empathy kind of like, oh well shit, like, you know, I logically, like I'm you know, still gonna stick with the definitions, but like I feel more for you because yeah, you're actually struggling. What frustrates me is when people who are like making 130K, like well within the top, like what, like 10% of 20%, like, yeah, like wealthy people, micro celebrities, right? Who are making this, and you know, that's not even including like perhaps some kind of like deals they can make, like sponsorships, who knows, that we have to think that they need to go because they don't need to go.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're in a position where like, I don't even feel like they need to go. I don't even feel like they should, like, more money is always great. Yeah. And I guess you could want to go, but like your want compared to somebody living like in the fucking gutter, like a minimum wage, like that person wants to like live a good life. You live a good life. You want to live a better life.
Yeah. And people want to live better lives.
Can I, so Prime, because I think maybe this will help some of you guys. So if somebody were like already wealthy, right, we probably wouldn't buy the idea that they were pressured into selling drugs, for example, right? That they were like trying to make ends meet, et cetera, pay the rent, whatever. But if somebody's poor, right, we'd probably buy that excuse sometimes if you're like a weak person, like some of you, right? You'll say, hey, yeah, you're poor, you don't have food, whatever. So maybe it's okay to do a bad thing, right? Selling drugs to your neighbors, poisoning the community because you need to get by, right? So I think that's kind of like the line that's being drawn here, right? So she's not in a position where she needs this, where it excuse for doing something immoral, right, or wrong to get more wealth, right? So I think that's the line that we're kind of hopping over.
Well,
I guess
I don't care. Much into your career, why wouldn't you try to get the most out of it that you could?
I don't know why you wouldn't.
Angel, do you watch the WNBA?
And the
we
last
already
thing
discussed
I'll say,
this.
The last thing I'll say is this idea of risk. Let's understand that that the risk was not there. Again, other than like doing the stupid thing about bringing the drugs in.
That was the risk.
No. But like, you got because people. Let's understand what people.
It was
don't
normalized.
go to Russia. People are saying don't go to Russia. Like going to Russia makes no sense. No, Spartacus said that before. Like, why are you going to Russia? I wouldn't go to Russia. That doesn't make sense. People are criticizing her for making $130,000 here.
Russia was not safe before
going there to make money. Russia was perfectly safe. We had a bunch of legitimate
They illegitimately detained Paul Whelan in 2018. It was not safe prior to this.
Detain people all the time here in the States. We do it all the goddamn time.
Then maybe it's not safe for a Russian to come here.
On a regular basis, we do that. Let's not pretend that there was anything different for Russia. I'm saying that like the calculus that was going on here was made perfect sense. McDonald's and other brand names sent our businessmen over there to do business, right? Understanding Russia is Russia, but they made the calculus that it's fine.
McDonald's is in Singapore. You get your hands chopped off if you get caught like fucking grabbing a piece of candy. Like, that doesn't make Singapore fucking safe just because McDonald's is there.
But also, we knew that Russia had the drug laws.
I've been trying to put in this fucking point for like a minute, right? We recognize that there is a reverse, okay? When you look at the United States hockey teams, right? Russians come over here for better financial opportunities all the time. You look at the Capitals team alone. Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Samsonov and Orlov are all fucking Russians that played hockey over there all the time, and they come over here for better economic opportunity, for more money, right? But it's not a stupid decision because there's like none of those people are in any real danger of the United States government locking them in prison to be fucking bargaining chips. But we have seen time and time again that Russia kidnaps political prisoners, and they do this regularly. If someone speaks out too much against Putin, they go to jail. If Pussy Riot wants to fucking talk some shit, they go to jail. In Russia right now, and for like the last decade, if you protest anything at all that the government does not like, they put a plainclothes officer to stand next to you with a sign and says, now you are part of a large protest because it's more than one person, They beat the shit out of you, and then they put you in jail for months on end. Russia's never been fucking safe. America has been relatively safe for these people, and it's not an apples to apples comparison.
So the takeaway is to increase more sanctions, or just simply don't go to Russia?
What?
I think a strict travel advisory is a
If
good
that's
idea.
what you gotta... What?
Wait, Fabian, I actually have a question. So let's say hypothetically, right? Elon Musk was to go to Russia, right? Do you think that they would go after Elon Musk? You know, knowing his stature and position
Probably
in
not.
the world and everything like
Be
that.
stupid for
Right. So at one point, I do think that it's probably fair to state that WNBA players thought that went over there to play, thought that they were at that same level of this isn't stupid. Because
Probably.
it hadn't happened beforehand, even in the 10
That's
years.
why she
of
got
going ahead
careless and
cracked down
brought
with that.
fucking weed with her and was being dumb.
Exactly. Right. So she got careless, probably due to, again, like lax, restrictions by the Russian government, on what they would normally do. Right. But she is still like making assumptions. And I'm not going to say she made a bad decision.
The Russians in my chat are yelling at me. They're like, no, Elon is not safe in Russia. Don't go.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Like, imagine that there is a character that would be Fabian Chatters. So here's the thing, right?
Well, they're just saying,
I
you
assume
ruined their
there's
space
something.
industry. They're going to be in trouble. I'm like, all right,
Okay,
fair enough.
that's all right.
Right,
So yeah, but like,
right.
imagine, you know what the analogy is. So, but that's the thing is, I think that this is an issue of ignorance, and I don't really think we should start prosecuting ignorance unless we put it on the books.
I don't think
It is on the books.
Well, you just laid out as an ignorance so much as like delusional narcissism.
I don't know if there's a difference between the two.
It's on the books.
Absolutely.
Wait, you said we shouldn't prosecute it if it's not on the books. It's on the books. It's on.
What is it? I honestly don't know. If there is...
smuggling drugs. Can't.
Yeah. So, but
yeah,
like, and
it's on
that's
the
like,
books.
again, like so the smuggling drugs is on the books. Okay, cool.
I mean, that's
so
assuming
we
she even
prosecute
fucking
there.
did it, right? Like,
What is
97% of
the-
fucking
She's
cases in
never denied
America.
it.
Smuggling drugs, smuggling
To be
2/3 of a
fair.
gram, what does that get you in a federal sentence?
If you're trying to smuggle it like internationally into the U.S., I don't know.
say you had,
I don't know.
yeah. So like, and that's like, I think a comparison we can also
But
go
it
ahead
doesn't
and
really
make,
matter.
right?
This is a different country with their own sovereignty. They can make up their own fucking laws about it.
Yeah, I've
She
got like
violated
a,
their law.
I've got like an uncomfortable like hypothetical, I guess. Like,
Oh, boy.
we treat it differently, but like they treat it very strict, and I disagree with them. But like, let's say you had a country, like I don't know, like Sweden, for example, where the age of consent is 15, and someone from Sweden comes over here and has sex with a 15-year-old, and then we arrest them for child molestation. Like, does Sweden have a leg to stand on demanding that we return their child molester because it's not illegal there, but it's illegal here?
Lactoid. Regardless of whatever the age of consent is in Sweden, I'm pretty sure the Swedish government would be like, oh, well, I guess that happened. And they'd fucking, like, they're not going to fucking fight at the UN
What
to
if,
get the
what
child
if they
molester.
did? What if it was a black lesbian
Well,
and like they
hold
were
on,
very
this is not a hypothetical. This is Roman Polanski scenario that you're discussing right here.
Mhm.
That's what happened.
Oh, okay. I didn't follow that.
Yeah.
So
that was back in the 70s, but yeah.
So for the first offense of smuggling marijuana underneath to the least amount is not less than 5 years and fine not more than $250,000, $1 million if other than an individual. So for the first offense, you can go to jail for not less than 5 years.
God damn!
Not less than 5 years.
That's insane.
God damn! All right.
I'm telling you,
And that's-
international shit is a whole different level. I'm telling you.
God damn.
So in America, she would have gotten a minimum of 5 years. So when you said before, somebody said, "Well, she would have been out already." That's not true. Like she got off in 5 years because she got caught in Russia instead of here.
Well, yeah, but here's the question: would that actually get prosecuted federally?
If it's
Like
a
the
minimum?
2/3? No, I'm saying, do you think
No.
that so law means
Charges
nothing if you
probably
don't
get dropped.
uphold it, right? The
Yeah.
charges would probably not occur, and I think
I don't know about that.
I think
If
we have to find.
Ovechkin, listen,
We would have to
if
find
Ovechkin-
somebody that had a gram that got 5 years.
If-
federally.
I
If
can
Ovechkin-
show you drug smugglers and drug
Yeah, but
traffickers.
like-
that
Yeah, I
get,
know,
like,
but
longer
like
than that.
yeah,
just
but like if
one gram.
Ovechkin,
right?
if
That's like the
Ovechkin-
thing.
if Ovechkin went to go visit his family in Russia, right, and came back with a gram of weed in his bag to like play for a Capitals hockey game, he's probably not getting prosecuted and going to jail for 5 months.
I don't know. If they actually decided to charge, they would have the authority to. And
unless
like,
of course we
done.
really want to get a spy back from Russia.
And this is like I guess this is like also like a broad
Ovechkin though.
Well, this is like a broad question.
It's for Ovechkin, all right.
This is like a
super high.
this is like a broad question, I guess, on like officer discretion or like prosecutorial discretion on like what they charge and what they don't charge. I mean, the fact of the matter is, in the United States, it's illegal to import drugs. As much as I wish drugs were legal worldwide, it is like a crime to do it in America. And if they had charged her and prosecuted her in America, she'd be still sitting in prison. But because they prosecuted her in Russia, she does what? A couple months?
But okay,
It was
all right,
9
so
years.
We'll 9 years. yeah.
Griner.
Yo,
Griner.
my
Griner,
co-host,
that's what I meant.
my co-host
That's what it was
wants me to
supposed
ask
to
Doobie about Isagawa and some Japanese German cannibal thing. You know about this, Doobie? 'Cause I have
I
no
know,
idea.
I know
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Was that the guy
fucked
who
up.
in Japan who met some dude who was into like vor? He wanted to be eaten, so the guy flew out to him. They, I think, like, and he cut him up and ate him while he was still alive, and they're having a conversation while the guy's on the table. I think he actually fed part of his body to the guy, and the guy was totally into it. And I forget how long he actually stood in. He's actually in prison, but he's out now. He's free. He ate a dude, so that's fucking interesting.
It's pretty basic.
Seems
There's
pretty chill.
one thing that's fucked up too. There was a Japanese guy who killed, I think it was 2 Dutch foreign exchange students, like in Europe. I think it was Italy. They caught him, and all they did was deport him to Japan, and he never got charged in Japan.
So apparently,
so he killed 2 women and ate them, and now he's fine.
Yeah,
Like, he's walking
apparently
around.
he said Isagawa ate a woman that went on a date with him, then was extradited to Japan and forced
Yeah,
based on those
that's
charges.
the one. And they did a documentary where like they went to his apartment,
Wait,
and he's like,
man?
he's fucking weird, dude. He's got all like these pictures of women all over his walls, like crazy shit.
Wait,
and he never saw a day of jail time for.
somebody?
Yeah, well, he murdered a woman and ate her, he's
I
never got
remember that
punished.
being a man for some reason. I guess it's a
I know.
woman.
There was a
think
German
my-
case that happened as well. Yeah.
There was a German case where like the guy
So-
cut off his penis and then like they like ate his penis together. There's lots of. I think
No,
there's a
he ate
few
his
of
whole
these
body.
things
Like
that
he ate
happen.
him. He killed him and ate him, but that was consensual. The Japanese
Yeah.
one was not consensual.
There might be more than.
Apparently, he
two of
was
these things.
extradited, and Japan like got him back, Isagawa back, and they
Wait, we're
just
both
never
put in
punished
jail.
him.
Were both these cannibals Japanese?
I think one
No,
was
no, no,
German.
no, no.
I don't know the goddamn story. My co-host was like, "Ask them. One of them will know."
I think there's.
I know.
multiple-
Isagawa sounds pretty fucking
I
Japanese.
think there's multiple examples of this, right? So like
Yeah.
we don't know this, we're just like in the dark here, but like there's multiple examples of people eating other people. All right. So we'll move on to the next topic. But this was a lot of fun. So thanks, guys. Guys, if you're enjoying this content, hit that follow button. If you're new here, hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. Do this all the time. Don't want you to miss out on any of the content. Expert social and chat for my social media. We got a lot of it. Twitter, Discord, TikTok, and YouTube, where you'll find the VODs. Like, comment, and subscribe. Love to have you there. And consider supporting the channel. Subscribe to the channel, just $5. Helps us out a ton. Use your Amazon Prime Prime Gaming on this community to support what we're doing. We can keep gathering these individuals and having these really fun moments. All right, moving forward. Next topic. The Qatar World Cup has been marred by the deaths of the migrant workers used to construct the stadiums. Opponents have said that a country's history of human rights violations should disqualify it from consideration of such events. But should that be the case? Many of these detractors come from Western nations that have their own history and present action of abuse. Should the World Cup or the Olympics be concerned at all about these sorts of problems? Or has Qatar breached some threshold for cruelty? So yeah, the Qataris, they killed a ton of people. They killed a shit ton of people. So far they've admitted to, they had like a Qatari official just recently on camera, and he's like, oh yeah, about 400 or 500, they're not sure, for about 500 migrants died, but a separate estimate was like 6,500 at least, and that's an undercount from what they got of migrant workers who just like straight up died constructing these stadiums over over a 10-year period. So there's that.
I think I read it was in the thousands.
6,500. Yeah.
Yeah, 6,500.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But she
I said that
just
wrong.
said the number.
No problem. So yeah, so a shit ton of people were lost, and people were saying that, well, even before that happened, Qatar should have never gotten it. But like, are we throwing stones in the glass house? Did I say that right? Hopefully I said that right. Can we actually be criticizing these people? Should it matter to these organizations, the World Cup and Olympics, because they like operate like the exact same way, it seems like. So yeah, we'll start with Lectwood.
Yeah. So one just truth of the world is that Western countries are better. Nations founded on Enlightenment principles with a dedication, even if imperfect, to individual rights and limited government are better. And unfortunately, Qatar is not that. Whataboutisms to cruelties done by governments past could be a condemnation of those governments or to the principles that underlie those actions, but not necessarily the governments as a whole and not necessarily the nation as it is now. As it is now, the whataboutism countries, such as Russia, China, and Qatar, are bad. Qatar is an absolute monarchy, which reserves the right to kill you if you're gay. It uses slaves, and it exports petrodollars to Islamic terrorists. That's just what they do. The fact that we even acknowledge this little fiefdom as anything other than a gas station in a U.S. airbase is embarrassing for the international community as a whole, and especially embarrassing for FIFA. It's pathetic that this is even a recognized country. It's a sorry show all the way around. Maybe if Qatar became a constitutional republic, which didn't do all these bad things, then they'd be fine to join the Western nations in being actual nations, and being civilized, because right now they're not.
See, Lactoid's a shy guy, you know, he doesn't like to really give his opinion. He's a bit of a wallflower, I'd say. So, let's go, Scott. Another wallflower.
Yeah, so Qatar is interesting. Right? They have a population of about 3 million. And if we believe the estimates, over a 10-year period, they had 6,500 workplace fatalities. Now in the United States, we're about 330 million. And we have about 5,000 per year. So in that time, about 50,000 deaths, workplace fatalities, which means that Qatar is working on like 10, 15 times per capita death. Now, of course, we have OSHA. You can hate OSHA for what you want, but Western countries certainly have more workplace regulations. We're more advanced in a lot of ways. We have a lot more rights. And of course, this is going to lead to less problems. So, you know, obviously this is bad, right? Just like Qatar is bad. It's a social welfare state off of oil money that's a brutal, you know, Wahhabist, Salafist monarchy, right? Wahhabism, for whatever reason, for some it's an insult, for others it's just an accurate depiction of their sect of Islam. But we can say Salafism just fine, without running into issues. So that being said, I do think it's a little overblown. You know, Qatar won the bid at $480 million, right? They won the bid for the country. It was a business opportunity for them. And I think we have this weird thing where we want to impose our values and force our values on these other countries that are bad, but it seems more like Twitterati virtue signaling than it does seeming to actually change and make the world a better place. And so I think when we look at what is happening in Qatar, where the police have agreed to not arrest people for public displays of affection and to not arrest people for symbols like pride flags and things like that, unless, or even public drunkenness, unless they engage in destruction of private property, as well as the fact that the country of Qatar has hadith all over and is presenting their religion to people, that this is actually an opportunity for cultural exchange and hopefully to make the situation better and be able to influence via soft power Qatar to be a better nation. I think we like to bloviate about how awesome we are, and we are better, period. Like, we're better than Qatar. It's not a very high fucking bar, right? But I think it's also important that we recognize Kuznets' curve, and we recognize that, like, as nations industrialize, you know, the middle class takes a while to grow. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, I think we should look at this as an opportunity for making that country better in such a way that, you know, isn't war, which, you know, seemingly hasn't worked out in the Middle East for the last 100 years. You know, so this idea that, like, we should ban, FIFA from showing up to these countries. I don't know what that solves. I don't know how that does anything other than make us pat ourselves on the back and going, yes, we're better than Qatar. Congratulations. You're better than Qatar. What have you done? That's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Rez.
Yeah, so when it comes to Qatar, I think that one point I was going to make was it's 65,000 or 6,500 deaths of within a million migrants over a 10-year period, because most of the people that were being used to construct the stadiums, fields, and everything like that were migrant workers. And the thing that I have a bigger issue with Qatar, that I think we can go ahead and move past even like the cultural issues that obviously exist between Qatar and the modernized West through liberalism, as Lactoid and Fabian have explained. I think that we actually need to address the fact that probably shouldn't be taking migrant workers' passports, which is something that has been a very largely, I think we can all agree about that. If we are going to exist in a world where, if we need people to go to another country to do work, for Qatar to actually be a part of the global economic, whatever you want to call this hodgepodge of shit, 100% you need to at least have that ability for people to be able to leave their countries if need be, if they're there for like work and whatever. So yeah, that's my biggest criticism of them. Otherwise, yeah, I'm open to a lot of the cultural trade stuff. I'm very interested in that.
If someone takes your passport in another country, you're being trafficked. At that moment, you've just been trafficked. When
yeah,
don't let that happen.
Okay, all right, yeah. So
yeah, let's go to Angel.
Okay, I'm just writing this statement right now. So these are just some thoughts. FIFA has had a massive corruption history for a while. Not that I'm saying that Qatar shouldn't be held responsible. They absolutely should. But this isn't new. It's not like FIFA is like some glorious, pure organization and now we've gone to this terrible evil place and it's just all fucked up. It's nothing new. It is also strange, and I guess this is potentially also something that we experience when we do things like the Olympics as well, but it's interesting, and I don't really know what to say on it yet, other than I find it an odd thing to do, like to mix, because there's like the developed world and then there's underdeveloped places or places that are still monarchies or whatever, different types of rulerships and whether they be dictatorial or not. But it's interesting when we mix amongst them and then we want to apply our current politics, even something just as little as like don't be racist or don't discriminate or whatever. Us, that's like obvious, don't discriminate for most of us, I believe. But for them, it's like they have no idea what to make of that, especially when it comes to LGBT. It's so foreign to them, including the human rights climate, that in regard to the migrant workers that have died. And what was it here? The Qatar World Cup chief said death is a natural part of life after a migrant worker died while fixing lights for a soccer training base. So they're completely insensitive to it. It's just it's the privilege, or not even privilege, but just like, how like you have a powerful figure at the top, they're so desensitized, not even desensitized, they just never come into contact with like such poverty or whatever. And then this is just a random sort of thought that I have in connection to Al Jazeera, which is Al Jazeera seems like it's usually, I don't know if it's left wing, but it's usually pretty like what's the word, palatable to like a Western audience. How is it that Qatar can put something out that's so palatable to us and then act so horrendously on their home base? I just think that's unusual and worth some thought.
Thank you so much. Aiko. You're muted, friend.
Sorry. Some of these things have been brought up already, but I want to just elaborate them on a little bit. On FIFA's like very well known, like historically large levels of corruption. I just remember in 2006 when Germany became hosts of the World Cup themselves. There wasn't anything scandalous about like who Germany was as a country at that point, but the big scandal was how they got it. Like they just flat out bribed FIFA officials. It was slated to go to a couple of countries in Africa that were going to share it. I think South Africa and maybe Nigeria, something like that. And Germany just like sort of swooped in and bribed the right people, and they got to host it. And it didn't come out till a few years later when it was too late and they couldn't reverse the decision. But it did get found out long before the actual tournament was being hosted. But no one did anything to reverse it at that point. Germany wasn't really punished in any significant way. These sorts of things just keep happening with FIFA, and it's just a very corrupt organization. Honestly, I don't know how to fix it, but this is a confluence of problems, one of which is the fact that FIFA is such a corrupt organization. But at the same time, you've got all of these petrostates, which are themselves corrupt in many, many ways. It starts in 1919 when, after World War I, the Western powers start dividing up the region. And instead of dividing it in ways that Lawrence of Arabia suggested, which was along sort of natural lines and tribal lines and things like that to minimize conflict, what they did was they carved out the areas that they thought had the most oil resources at the time, and they made those independent, and then they made everything else independent states that were countries that they thought at the time didn't have many resources. And so you had this sort of artificially created division of resources, which is why you get these migrant labor situations going on, because the poor countries are now being taken advantage of by the rich countries, and it didn't have to be that way. These are not sort of natural divisions for these countries. And so now these petrostates are like more corrupt than they even otherwise would have had to have been, which I think they were destined to be corrupt anyway because of the nature of those resources. But it's even worse than it has to be. And I think that's key to this kind of discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, Spartacus.
It's a nice little piece of fucking
first off,
history,
I don't think that I really don't think America's in a position to where we can really blame FIFA for choosing Qatar as the place to host FIFA. Qatar hosts what's known as the United States Central Command, otherwise known as CENTCOM. That is where the United States has the military command for countries such as Egypt, Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq, Israel, Lebanon, and the like. And so until the United States pulls out CENTCOM from Qatar, then we really have no business telling FIFA they can't go there. I just see as we're sticking our nose somewhere it doesn't belong, and yes, we're definitely throwing stones in glass houses, because if anyone looks into this too much, they're gonna figure out CENTCOM's there, and they'll be like, okay, so you're willing to call out FIFA, but you're not willing to call out your own government for putting the Central Command in a country that you said FIFA can't go to.
And TP.
Yeah, basically what, I don't know. I think that I'm kind of torn on this one, to be honest with you. See, because I do think it's wrong for them to basically be enslaving these people, right? Like, clearly. But I don't know how that changes if we don't interact with them. I think that the cultural exchange that happens when you have like Western people, Western country nations, Western businesses even interacting with these other countries that have very, very like cultures that are like outlandish to us, right? Like Angel said earlier, like they don't interact with poverty. I don't think he said they don't interact with poverty. I think they just genuinely see these people as less than them, so they don't give a fuck, right? Because they in their culture, that's just the way it is, right? They're like the upper class, and they're like the lower class, and these people are basically like slaves, and they just don't care. So, I don't know how you fix that problem if you even care about fixing it, right? If you even care about like fixing fucked up cultures around the world without interacting with it. So, I think maybe long term, it's better for the planet, right? If you want a planet to exist in the future without these kind of cultures, to just suck it up, interact with them, and then use the opportunity to sell your culture. That might be better.
Reverie Panel.
Also, one more thing I wanted to point out that they did, just further evidence of this nation's crimes. They fucking broke a contract with Budweiser just days before the actual World Cup, in which they had agreed to sell beer during it, and then they went back on that. So we know they're not trustworthy either.
Indeed.
Hey,
So-
Angel,
so
can
I
you-
kinda
can-
wanna-
Can you forward that link to where you said that someone called the United States horrendous in Al Jazeera, because I'm not finding it.
I didn't say
So-
that.
So
you said the United States was doing horrendous things at home and something along those lines.
Oh, no, the thing that I was referencing from an article was the guy that said death was a natural part of life.
Okay.
So I kind of look at this the same way, and I know this is going to be a little bit of an aside, but I promise it'll make sense. But let me get there. Right? Mark Victors and Blake Masters in the Arizona election, where a lot of Libertarian Party people were upset that Mark Victors endorsed Blake Masters, right? Because Blake Masters talked, a pretty good game about like a lot of libertarian philosophy. He was running, with Murray, like talking about reading Murray Rothbard and being inspired by Ayn Rand and all these things, right? And what I kind of thought about it is like, yeah, the Libertarian Party has very little effect on elections, right? Like 60% of people that vote Libertarian will refuse to vote Republican or Democrat. And then they kind of split between Democrat and Republican. So they don't really spoil elections. They don't do much in terms of elections in the United States. And so I do think sometimes it's good, if we know we're going to lose anyways, to endorse a candidate. But I think we should get something if we endorse a candidate, right? Like what I think the mistake there was is we should have gone to Blake Masters. We should have said, hey, I'll endorse you, but I want you to publicly say that you won't do this thing so that we can chastise you and shame you if you do it once elected. And I think it's kind of the same thing with countries and like these like kind of like negotiations, right? Is that we should try and get little concessions from them as a means of using like negotiations, right? Like, yeah, we'll support this, but like, if we're gonna allow this and we're gonna be there and we're gonna have our team show up, like we demand that you let us, I don't know, have a pride armband, right? Or we demand that you do not arrest anybody for public intoxication, or whatever it is, right? Get that little bit of chip and make them make a public statement promising that they won't do these things on the record, and then shame the other loving shit out of them if they go back on it. And just every time they try and speak, go, fuck you, you're a liar. You promised this and you didn't do it. Fuck you, you're a liar.
They already lied with the Budweiser shit, but I agree.
They did.
Right, but like,
Right,
I think a good idea would be like you have like a runner-up kind of candidate, where the first party like breaks their contracts, then it like move everything to a different.
Right, it's just like I don't understand this idea from so many Westerners,
That would
right?
never
That are
work.
like,
Logistically
we're based, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna like we need to pull out. We need to not involve these countries, right? And it's like, sure, if FIFA wants to choose to do it in another country, that's perfectly fine. But like, Qatar's gonna exist, right? Like Qatar exists. Like it doesn't disappear just because we boycott them, right? And maybe the boycott can make some changes, but like, how do we actually affect change and make the world a better place for those people? And
We did this in South
the best
Africa, right?
strategy.
It was more than boycotted. Like they were blockaded by the surrounding Gulf countries for like a few years, and that didn't work on them. So they had like a list of demands and didn't give in to any of that. And in fact, they dropped the boycott just before the World Cup, so they can get some of that World Cup money, the travel money. So yeah, that doesn't work.
Right. I mean, I think what changes cultures is cultural exchange and free trade, and I think that's why that's one of the major successes of the Trump administration, for example, was Jared Kushner realizing that all of these dumb political people that were trying to have these religious treaties were never going to fucking fix anything. What we needed to do was open up trade, and we needed cultural exchange. And I think that was actually probably one of the few foreign policy successes that I'll always say was a good idea from the Trump administration.
Yeah, which one did Trump get the UAE to trade with? Because he got the UAE to like sign a peace and trade deal with a different country.
There was like seven different ones. Some of them were in the Middle East. One of them was it Serbia and
Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, and Jordan.
Right, and like the opening up of trade, the opening up of like cultural. I think that this is kind of the way we can hopefully influence things towards a better degree.
I want to push back on you on this, right?
Mhm.
So that's the lie that I would normally agree with everything you said there, Scott, and that we want to trade with these people, have some sort of cultural contact, that exchange of ideas. But China seems to be proving that just doesn't happen, right?
Well, that's why I said I added the caveat. I added the caveat that if we're going to do that every time, we should demand that they push a little. Every time that we're like, look, you guys do this, you have to give us this, and you push that a little bit further.
What and like, could you give us an example in the sense of China? Then, like, what would that look like?
Okay, so well, first of all, what we would have done is we would have gotten rid of Dexter White instead of having communists as the Secretary of Treasury in America that was supporting communists in China. So we would have to go all the way back there. But if we're starting now, right, even though we've had communists running the State Department, in the beginning of that, if we're starting now, right, and we want to fix that situation, right, demand that if we're not going to allow foreign investment in terms of like corporations without having tariffs, and we'll reduce those tariffs the moment that the CCCP stops giving out 1,000 or 100-year rental properties and instead actually allows people to legitimately buy property. Say like, look, we're going to have tariffs until companies own the property, as opposed to, it would be a symbolic Pyrrhic victory. It wouldn't actually change anything, right? But a lot of times in China, especially in Beijing, you don't actually own property. You rent property for 100 years. That could be like one little thing in a negotiation, like these little negotiations to try and force the culture towards private property and individual rights, like we have,
Okay.
like we're working towards in the West.
Okay, so then you would require government action. So what I was going to say is that we see with the normalization of trade relations is that corporations bend to China, and our governments seem to bend them to a certain extent as well. That like in the search for profits, they like these companies have no loyalty to any egalitarian values, and so as soon as they can, they'll talk.
China's been
out.
fighting a trade war for like 60 years, and like only one president ever attempted to fight back. And I don't want to fucking sing Trump's praises again because there's a lot of reasons I don't like him, but he's one of the few presidents to even attempt to recognize that we're in a trade war with China. We just haven't been fighting.
I think this is also a concern because all the authoritarian countries, for which there are many that we've been able to have tremendous influence on and shift towards a Western mindset. So Spain,
Japan,
Taiwan. Well, I'm saying Spain, Taiwan, and maybe South Korea, right, are examples of countries where they're not like particularly resource-rich areas that have a tremendous amount of self-earning potential in the same way Qatar does. So they sort of have to be a little bit like the international community's bitch, in the form of maybe Turkey and Spain would be like NATO's bitch. Germany, we just had to straight up fucking invade them. Same thing with Japan. I'm concerned about some of the Middle Eastern fiefdoms, our ability to actually change them, because we can hold the carrot and we can say, hey, we're not going to give you this investment. And what are they going to say? Well, on per capita, we're way wealthier than you. What are you trying to do? Come dangle this carrot, right? Fuck you.
We could invest in nuclear, and then they would have no fucking economy.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Until we make until we put them out of business, I'm concerned with our ability to actually influence them in any meaningful way. And that's why I think that and the hardest thing is to I want to take a strong arm with them. They are a counterweight to Iran. That's the biggest problem. But at the same time, there's no reason. I think it's a reasonable rule for FIFA would be if your country has slaves, you don't get to participate. I think that's a pretty base don't have slaves. I think that should be pretty.
Yeah. So what
universal.
Fabian said there at the
Thanks-
end is
thanks,
exactly where I was hoping to take this, because we are talking about petrostates here, and like I talked about, the world that was created by 1919, we essentially anchored the world economy to these resources. And if you look at the petrostates in the world, they're largely perceived as being enemies of the West or enemies of the United States, right? You've got Venezuela, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia. I mean, these are, that list of where most of the world's oil resources are. These are also places that don't have much else outside of that. So if we can restructure our economy so that we're no longer dependent on fossil fuels, a lot of these problems get mitigated. And maybe it's not the sporting world that makes this all so terrible. Maybe it's the structure of our global economy that's making it so terrible. And sports is just like another manifestation of that.
This is why we should all support Tesla, right? Get off of oil. Elon Musk.
Yeah, I mean, sure, in EVs in general.
Buy a Tesla, burn coal to charge your Tesla.
Well, this is why I didn't want to focus on Qatar specifically, and like try to broaden the conversation, and like look at the principle of the matter. Because like, let's understand how Qatar got the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
They straight up bribed the officials, right? Like,
yeah.
they just
well, it's like an open bribe, right? Like it's a bid.
Isn't
that what we do every year?
Is that how the Super Bowl gets won, though? You bribe the officials to get the Super Bowl in your state?
Yeah, it's not just the bid.
They actively like went and hit the members, right? And there was like a raid, like a FBI raid on their headquarters afterwards. It was like a huge thing that happened a few years ago.
Just like Germany 2006.
Straight up fucking, yeah, exactly. That's why I thought you were talking about Qatar when you first started talking, because that's exactly what they did. Yeah.
It happens over and over.
But anyway, so anyway, I was trying to expand this past Qatar and saying that if there was a specific country that was doing it, right? Like name the country that is not an enemy of the United States, but engaged in some sort of human rights abuse.
What if it's an unstated rule? What if FIFA's like, yeah, we got to get some bribes if we're gonna go to your
South
country?
Korea?
Like, what if that's an unstated rule by FIFA? Like, if you don't bribe us, we're not going to your country.
South Korea. We all love South Korea, but anybody that's ever been in the United States military knows plenty about either stories or what have you about the juicy girls in South Korea, right? What happens? The entire government turns a blind eye as women are brought from all over Southeast Asia, brought in there. They take their fucking documentation away. And then even though prostitution is legal and porn is illegal, right? What we know is that if these girls, right, these girls know that they'll be deported and be financially fucked up in a terrible situation unless they go into these fucking soju bars and sit in the laps of fucking American soldiers and try and swindle them out of like some money by like putting shit on their check that's not supposed to be on their check, right? Like this happens in South Korea and the government turns a blind eye to it.
And who's doing that? Like who's setting
We
that
can
up?
stop that. I mean, they're in our pocket. Why aren't we stopping that right now? What the fuck?
Because we have bigger issues to fight.
Because we don't have a news media that latched onto this specific country to talk shit on it right now, right? Like what's going on is that like we have a bunch of fucking ADHD headline reading fucking American citizens that follow whatever crafted fucking story is considered to be important at the time. And right now we're talking about Qatar. Why? Because there's a bunch of fucking eyes on the World Cup. That's why.
It's kind of interesting because I googled Qatar and the U.S. relations, and the first thing that came up is like how the U.S. is basically commending Qatar on advancing peace and security in the Middle East, talking about opening up flights between Tel Aviv and Doha.
Yes, because we are strong allies with Qatar. We have, like I said, we have CENTCOM there. We have the United States Central Command inside of Qatar.
They let us park our planes there.
It's
more than just park our planes. They let us direct the rest of the Middle Eastern troops that we have there from Qatar.
It's pretty base.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, like what if it just became like the 51st state? Then we could do it from there as well.
I was gonna ask. You're gonna ask them.
I mean, that's kind of the idea, right? We're only friends with them because like we need them.
Make the rest of the world make the United States the one world government.
I mean, ultimately, that's the plan.
The United States recognizes Qatar's progress on expanding labor rights, implementing labor laws, and combating human trafficking. Has reopened it. This is a typo, maybe. Has reopened its humanitarian care shelter for victims of human trafficking and a move to abolish exit permits for workers.
Okay, are we just reading articles now?
It looks like there's being. No, I'm not just reading articles.
My
point is that it looks like that we as in the States are, whether it's hard or soft pressure, I can't really tell, but it seems like there's a push for better human rights situation.
Right. There's some like improvements, and like even in Saudi Arabia, like there are some improvements, but like when you look at the scale of these improvements, it's kind of sad. Like for example, like Saudi Arabia, they just started letting women drive. Oh, look at us! Look how great we are.
Well, that was at least
let's take
5 years ago, 10 years ago now.
Sure, right, but that's like the most recent like big like thing that they let that they changed, right? And if that's if that's where we're
used
at,
to be able to go to school.
right? But if that's where
Gay
we're
marriage,
Yeah.
is still illegal in Japan.
And South Korea, actually, I was just reading an article about South Korea and their gay community. It's pretty much the same thing. But
Like in most like districts or whatever, it's fine. But like federal,
but this is like, can you
it's
leave the
weird
house
in Japan? But like,
I'm pretty sure, like, don't women still need like permission from their male guardian to like leave the country or something along these lines? I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
that's
but
okay.
like this is still like just a good, right? Like, so there's some amount of good that's actually happening.
Some,
like if we're
yeah.
saying, but if we're saying it's pathetic, like, I mean, you know, women being able to have any amount of rights in countries that often view them as property or something like that is immediately giving them character, personality. That is a huge step. I think that's even like behind like the Iranian protests that we've been looking at, is a lot of that, you know, self determination starting to creep into a lot of Middle Eastern countries, you know, through, again, efforts of soft power, as well as just in general that kind of overflowing from country to country.
yeah, I mean, you
How
have to
long do you
look
think
at,
it would
you have to look
take?
at you have to look at fundamentalist Islam and see how much further they have to go from like Christianity.
Yeah,
I mean, look, it's an
You know what I
absolute
mean? Like-
monarchy. It's an absolute
Yeah.
monarchy. These people are ruled by like the government. We had how many fucking hundreds of years?
You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Well,
just saying,
it's
like
it's a theocracy. I think most
Western-
of these governments can be
Well, no,
considered
Qatar-
theocracies
Qatar
or
is a-
monarchies.
Qatar
right?
is just a straight up absolute monarchy. Same with
Okay.
Saudi Arabia. It's like on like a linear, like a family basis.
Things I don't know.
Iran
Yeah, but
is a
Qatar-
theocracy.
Qatar is weird though because it's so resource rich that it's like a welfare state, right? Like most of the individuals within Qatar are like living reasonably well lives, because of the fact that they're basically bought off to not have issues with the form of governance that they have.
The citizens,
Because the citizens, yes, not the migrant workers,
which are a minority, by the way. There's only about 313,000 citizens.
Yeah, there's
compared to
like
like over like almost 2 million immigrant work. Like there's, it's
Yeah.
like nothing.
it's crazy.
Yes.
It's crazy. But yeah, a thing on that Saudi Arabia example is that they let women drive right after there was like these protests, like these women who started like breaking the law, and to Scott's point, like that made international news. These women who would like start driving, so they allow the women to start driving, right? They give them that ability, but
and then
those
traffic
women,
accidents went up 3 times.
funny. But those women that did the protest, they arrested them and tortured them. One of them, I think she's still in there, right? Like getting regular beatings, either threatened with rape or actual rape, probably actual rape, and just like I think actual like cattle prods or something like that. Like it's terrible what they put that woman through. So yeah, progress, whatever.
Right, but you're dealing with a culture whose religion, dictates law, right? Like, there's not a lot of law dictated from Christianity, other than like, the acceptance of the king, like render unto Caesar what is Caesar, render unto God what is God's, right? And meanwhile, when you're looking at like fundamentalist revolutions of Islam, right, like going back to the kind of the Sunnah and the Quran, and then whatever fucking imam choosing whatever hadith supports their own personal power. Like, you're dealing with a religion that specifically states that a woman is not to be trusted in court, and that her word is worth half of that of a man, and that she needs another woman to corroborate her story, because we know that like women can't be trusted, right? Like,
I think
so
it's
like
1/4.
I'm pretty sure it's 1/2, but like other hadith might like interpret the number differently. But like, you see what I'm saying? Like they have a lot
There is
long,
laws
they have a
in
lot farther to
Christianity,
go.
though, right?
Okay.
There is laws in Christianity. So like you're talking about how like Islam has laws. I would say they have a lot more laws and a lot stricter laws. But there's
That's what I
still
said.
laws that come from Christianity, though. It's not just give to Caesar what is Caesar's.
Yeah, it's true.
There's
Yeah,
a
I'm
lot
talk-
more
yeah,
in the
I'm- I
Bible that
didn't-
we use to utilize in Western culture as law.
Yeah, but that's not against what I'm saying, right? Like, I recognize that there are like things that have a foundation in Christianity, obviously, right? What I'm saying is that like, Christianity, for example, doesn't have any rules on like how we treat the goy, or like how like the people of the book versus like our people, right? Like, it's a very different religion in that regard.
I'm wondering what are we actually talking about here? Are we more trying to focus on the World Cup, or are we trying to focus on like Middle Eastern relations? I just want to know where to.
Yeah, so I wanted to expand it,
Anything.
and maybe focus on like the idea of the super national events, right? Being the Olympics, being the World Cup, and well, one, should they operate in the way they operate, right? And is the way they're operating wrong? And then I guess we can expand this question again to say, should there be a response from our respective nations, right? From the U.S., from Canada, if they do something corrupt, and this was straight up corruption, what happened with Qatari, right? Should there be a response in that, like, well, we're not going to show up to these games? And again, we don't have to focus on the just example of Qatari, but just like
looking at FIFA though, looking at the Olympics, like this is like the Super Bowl worldwide. Pretty much every country. This is every country's Super Bowl besides the United States, because we told everybody else to go fuck themselves and create our own little Super Bowl. So it's like asking Americans not to care about Super Bowl. Even if people who don't watch the NFL still watch the Super Bowl. So I think you're asking too much for what's actually going to be delivered. Asking people to not go to FIFA games, asking people to like stop enjoying soccer, stop watching soccer. It's not going to happen. You're asking for the impossible.
I didn't say that. So
we can impose penalties that aren't that, right? Like you don't have to like cancel the whole thing. We can say like, okay, like we're gonna like issue you like after this, we're gonna issue you fines for breaking your contract with Budweiser. We can't have you like just like taking the money and then running on like the main sponsor for your event 2 days before it happens. We can't have that going forward. Like it's gonna be very difficult now for like future sponsors, like in these kind of countries. I'm not gonna fucking put up money for that shit. Like make that the rule. Also, no slaves. Like going forward.
Okay.
But like the second, the second most important thing here, the no slaves thing, right? If
Budweiser
slaves,
most important.
Yeah. We issue you fines for that or some shit. Like, and then like afterwards we say, okay, you have these fines. Pay these fines, and then you can re-enter FIFA. Right? This is what you did wrong, and then
are you speaking
telegraph
from
that
perspective of FIFA, or who are when you say we?
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah. So like, I mean, FIFA. What I want FIFA to do, and can the U.S. like make FIFA do this? Maybe. I mean, with the contract thing, I would make like if I could have the U.S. force FIFA to try to enforce that, I would.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously the United States.
Lactoid, 1 second, Lactoid. Are you really obligated to have a sponsor like who says that they sell beer? Are you really obligated to sell to advertise their shit when you realize it's just sparkling water?
No. So they did sell the sparkling water shit, okay? And that was the only thing they could sell, because 2 days before they were going to sell the real shit. But then Qatar was like, no, without any like warning, they just pulled the fucking agreement. And then immediately afterwards,
I was making fun of Bud Light, by the way.
Oh no, I know. Well, oh, like the actual beer. Well, it's Budweiser. So.
It's sparkling water.
It's the same thing.
It's American.
It's different. No, Bud Light Lime, by the way, is really good. I don't know how.
I mean, but the power that comes from there is going to come from like individual companies to begin with, right? Like it's not like something that's unilaterally nation by nation. It's the companies themselves that are going to make those demands that they're like, oh yeah, you have to sell our products or they won't support FIFA going forward, which is, I don't know. I mean, that is ultimately just Western values being imposed.
But they already took the money. They already took the money.
Yeah, but going forward, they're going to do FIFA again next year.
Yeah, but they got to pay back Budweiser.
So the United States is a party to all contracts that involved Americans, right? By having a monopoly on the enforcement of said contracts, right? So I mean, you don't have to, let's say, sanction Qatar, right? Like the United States, for example, could sanction FIFA, could sanction other things. They could say, look, we're like, in terms of our taxes and the people on our team and like what we're going to do in our merchandise that you want to sell, any FIFA merchandise you want to sell in the United States, we sanction you until you meet these demands. Now, if you go too far, you're going to turn the entire international community of fucking football gangs against us, right? But if you're very careful about it, right, as someone that is as the United States is holding in trust the responsibility as the arbiter of these contracts in regards to the individual rights of American citizens, right? Because so long as they maintain the power of a monopoly on the enforcement of those contracts, and that has not been given back to the people in voluntary exchange, then they hold that in trust. And so they could conceivably make demands on behalf of those American citizens in the contracts that are involved and the tourists that are involved, and make small demands. And they could do it against FIFA. They don't have to do it against Qatar.
Okay, so I don't think any of you will find it surprised that I don't give a shit about Budweiser. I don't give a shit about them being fucked over. I thought it was pretty hilarious that it happened.
I only care about the slaves.
Prime only drinks gin. Okay, it's just gin. That's it.
Exactly.
No beer.
So I wanted to focus on the slaves. It's the weakness of mine. And like, okay, so China. And I forget the actual timeline here, so someone could like yell at me in the comments about like how I'm getting this wrong, right? But China hosted the Olympics. But China has also like detained its Muslim minority group, right? Engaged in cultural genocide there. China has also detained the Falun Gong
socialists. We get it.
Okay, that's fine. They're Falun Gong participants and like stolen their organs, right?
Yeah.
Like they've done that. So like should that have a response like on the sports level? Like it should be have said you do not deserve these Olympics. Like the international community comes together and puts pressure on the Olympic Committee and say, fuck off, this can't happen here, or we're not participating at the very least. If not like shutting the Olympic Committee down, saying that we are withdrawing our teams because China is the international pariah.
I think it should, but the only time I've really seen anything to this extent of what you're talking about was Nazi Germany. That's really the only time you've seen anything of that extent. And even then, like they hosted it prior. So like,
to which extent are you referring?
The Olympics?
Do you mean the Uyghur thing or the Falun Gong thing, or which part?
Talk about Nazi Germany.
No, I'm asking what you're comparing Nazi Germany to.
The Uyghurs.
Okay.
I'm saying the only time there's ever been
Concentration camps.
I'm saying the only time there's ever been something like that that's been sports wise has been Nazi Germany to that extent.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, I'll even say that like with Qatar, I do somewhat buy the argument that like they're small enough that we could like maybe kind of like influence them and bully them and kind of like make them see the light of and the error of their ways.
We can't bully them as long as we're buying our oil there. As long as
I agree.
sitcom there, there's no bullying happening.
So it's more difficult because of those things, but at the same time, I think that we can influence them to a greater degree than we can China. Like I said before, like I think China's like at this point, like investing in them isn't like bringing them closer to us. We're just merely like paying for the bullets that they're going to use against us one day. And I mean, we should do no business with China at this point at all. Like we should try to divest as much as possible, move over to like better countries that aren't totalitarian hellholes.
I mean, we can already see it with like Nike. Nike's starting to use Nike's now. It's Vietnamese. It's now Korean.
Good.
They're not doing that for human rights reasons, right?
They're not.
They're not doing
good.
it for human rights reasons, but it's better for America that they're not interacting with China. They're interacting with the Vietnamese and Koreans.
Fair enough.
The market knows all.
Yeah, I mean, China, I think is a special case because it is overwhelmingly authoritarian and has done horrible things to such a degree where I think you could probably like it's a little bit more imperative that you divest from those situations. I also want to point out, real quick, when we talk about China, we often talk about the Uyghurs being kidnapped and put into re-education camps. As socialists are wont to do. But what we don't talk about is the fact that there are tons and tons and tons of people that are actual slaves in Africa, owned by Chinese firms, supported by the CCP, where women are working in conditions where they're really excited if a guard rapes them, because if a guard rapes them, they know that guard will probably protect them from being gang raped by all of the other slaves in the mines, and that their life expectancy goes up, and that they might actually be able to live to one day escape those situations. And they're giddy to be raped by those guards. Like that's the level of conditions of like some of the cobalt mines and things like that. You want sources for that? I'll get you some stuff.
Yeah. I just haven't heard that. I'd really like to learn more about
precious metal stuff in Africa, mercury poisoning of villages from the runoff and like people dying from extreme levels of silicosis, like way larger than like concrete workers get and stuff. Like there's a lot of brutal shit that China's involved in, worse than the Uyghurs.
Oh, thank you so much. Seriously, I really want to hear about that. If you could provide me that source. Doobie, you raised your hand, and I was going to call on you any which way. But if you have something to say it first.
No, I was just gonna ask, like, if you guys would be opposed to the U.S. government, like, imposing some kind of like penalties on companies that do business with Qatar, Saudi Arabia, China, whatever.
Again, we would have to post sanctions on ourselves. We have CENTCOM there.
Yeah, I
We
understand
buy
that.
oil from there consistently. Like, if you look too far into Qatar, you'll figure out the United States does a lot of shit there.
Yeah, I understand.
So
I understand. What I'm asking you is, if we decide as a country that another nation is doing something terrible, right? Whether it's like China with the Uyghurs or Qatar or Saudi Arabia for whatever the fuck, would you be opposed to the U.S. government saying, "Hey, we've designated this country specifically as a bad country where bad things are happening. So if you do business with that country, we are going to find the fuck out of your business. We're going to shut your business down."
Not for China. For China, I'd be in favor of that rule.
it would have to be pretty bad.
It seems to
Slaves,
me that
like
there's
I
a
feel like-
prioritization that needs to happen. You need to, because obviously, like, if you start looking for flaws in every country, like, not, everyone's going to make the cut. Like, everyone's going to have to be like under that rule. So what you have to do is you have to find a number, like a certain percentage of the world, like we can afford to do that with, and prioritize the worst actors. And to a degree, we do that now. Like, Iran is definitely on the list. The world sanctions Iran, and Russia's on that list currently because of what's happening now. There's only so many more. I shouldn't say number of countries so much as like points of GDP or whatever.
You can only do it so many times before you get a civil war of the world.
Well, at some point it won't work,
yeah.
right? Because you need to get a tipping point's worth of the world, like, on side against whoever these actors are. And so whether Qatar makes that cut or not, I don't know, because there's a lot of really bad actors in the world, and a lot of them have a tremendous amount of power. And so with regards to doing this with Qatar, you're talking about adding a lot of points of GDP relative to whatever civil rights gains you might be getting from it. And so sadly, that's the realpolitik that goes into those calculations.
So you don't actually need to sanction anything. All you need to do, right, is advocate, whether it be slow, whether it be fast, I don't give a fuck, right? All you need to advocate for is removal of literally every protection that America affords any company, any individual, or any contract that deals in such a way where it is non-voluntary and not respecting of private property. So anything that has slavery, anything like we can yell about wages, we can yell about what country you do business with, anything like that, right? So when Apple, for example, part of their products are using, conflict resources, we simply say, look, you're using conflict resources, you can do that, whatever. We're not going to sanction you, we're not going to tax you. We're just going to remove literally every international protection you have. In the America, as far as we considered, the moment you step out of this border, you're just a person. We don't give a fuck about you. And just remove all of those protections. You only gain those protections if you're using.
You're talking about like if they don't respect private property, then we do this. Like, we already have private property forfeiture through eminent domain. No, the United States does this all the time. They use eminent domain to
irrelevant
get private property. It's
irrelevant.
Not irrelevant because the United States itself doesn't respect private property in that way.
I don't give a fuck about hypocrisy. I'm against the state. I'm a libertarian, right? Like, I'm talking about how do we push the needle in the correct direction, right? I'm not going to sit here and fucking back the blue. Like, it's irrelevant because I'm against both of those things.
China's also just different in terms of the threat they pose, right? Like, funding them is, we're setting ourselves up. We gotta stop doing that.
Yeah, and there is a big difference between these petrostates, like I talked about before, and China, in that,
yes,
like when we get off of fossil fuels, which will happen, like, those threats will go away, but China will remain as a threat. So absolutely believe that prioritizing them makes sense.
Yeah. And and Trump got a lot of shit for it, but I mean, another kind of like along these lines, like tariffs on Chinese goods is one way to do this, right? You raise the price for getting shit from China, and everywhere else starts becoming a lot more attractive for putting your money. There's a reason why U.S. firms aren't doing business in Russia right now.
Won't that really hurt our
on China
consumption of manufactured goods?
Well, no, I don't think we should. I don't think we should add further aggression, right? Like we should just remove protections. Like don't tariff things, just remove protections. The problem with tariffs, right, is that it hurts everybody.
Yeah.
It hurts us as much as it hurts China. And even worse, what it does is it means that large corporations with a lot of capital that have their investments diversified and are in multiple different domains are less hurt by specific tariffs. When we talk about steel tariffs, right? Like you have these giant companies like Amazon, right? A steel tariff hurts them a little bit, but they can absorb the cost, and because they're diversified, the economy balances out. They do okay.
Yeah.
But like a small construction company that depends primarily upon, let's say, steel for whatever it is that they're doing, collapses under this.
Right. And I don't.
Right?
Here's the issue.
So I would rather remove protections for American companies doing those things.
Okay, that's one way to do it, right? And I agree that like any kind of like financial thing here should be like equitable in the sense of the idea is just like kind of scale this up to make it like continuously more expensive to do business in China and less expensive to do it elsewhere. And you would want that like to not be focused on one field too much. But I mean, I'm not convinced that that would stymie their growth and stymie the threat that they pose to the extent that I'm concerned about. I think we have to start figuring out how to starve them out.
If America made a public statement that said, "Hey, Apple, because you are engaged in a product chain that uses conflict resources, if one of your tankers gets hit by pirates, we don't care." I don't know, man. I feel like that changes the game a little bit.
But isn't that also like with steel, right? If you're importing steel from China, like that'd be like a kind of a conflict resource in that extent. So you're just like paying the cost. You're paying the cost that comes with supporting that industry, supporting China.
Yeah, but the problem with tariffs, right, is again, it hurts our economy and it hurts their economy, and it's kind of a game of like who breaks first, right? Whereas if you remove protections, what you actually do is you create an incentive structure to move to other places that doesn't inherently hurt our economy in the same way that tariffs do. On top of that,
it doesn't. Are you sure?
I mean, it depends on how captured the market is, but in a certain thing, right? So like when it comes to like conflict resources, we're no matter what we do, we're gonna have to bite a bullet for a while because we use so many electronic goods, and China has close to a monopoly on many of those resources. But I mean, like there are companies that are fighting, back against that. Like Motorola, for example, has really upped their business in trying to find cobalt in Colorado. Right?
Look how Motorola
all of a sudden, right? But if the situation is changed, right, where we're no longer protecting companies that are doing investment in one area, but we're still continuing to protect that, all of a sudden, it changes the balance a little bit.
How much is that influenced by the Defense Production Act being invoked this year?
Wait, what?
The defense.
It's been invoked. It's been invoked a couple times. It's been invoked for the baby formula. It's been invoked for vaccines. Like
it's been invoked
what specific act you talk about?
What are you talking
Defense Production Act being invoked?
He invoked the Defense Production Act this year for the production of lithium and cobalt within the United States, and then also separate from that, the Inflation Reduction Act also said that you can't get the EV subsidies unless more than 50% of your mineral resources that go into the cars and the batteries for the cars come from within the United States. Both of those were oriented.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a libertarian. Obviously, I'm going to be against subsidies and and things like that. Like, I don't feel like that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I assumed you're against it. I just wanted to know if you thought like that influenced Motorola's decision to do that.
Motorola's been working on this for like a decade.
Are you against tariffs like on a strict like
Now
principle?
they might have
Scott?
they might have bought some fucking politicians to make that happen. I don't fucking
Sure,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
Maybe
that might
so.
be why they did it. Who fucking knows?
So finish up this tariff
Yeah,
talk.
I just want to
I
ask.
want to expand this to everyone else.
Are you against tariffs like on a principle basis? Because like
Tariffs are an act of aggression.
Sure, to maybe to like a lesser extent in some
But like
ways.
removing protections, we could do that with Qatar, right?
Okay, but like here's my question, right? Ultimately, I'm gonna do like, but what about Hitler, right? This is what I'm gonna give you a what about Hitler question. 1940, we find out that they're starting the Holocaust or whatever the fuck. Should we can we tariff or straight up ban like the trade with them, or do we have to just like remove protections and hope that does it?
I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what removing protections would do in that situation.
Right.
I'm
That's
against
my
things
concern.
upon principle. I'm not a fucking consequentialist that makes moral predictions based off of whether or not I can predict the future. So for all I know, that course of action might have stopped World War II from happening. I don't fucking know.
Okay.
I don't do wrong things because I think they'll lead to better outcomes.
That's why I asked. Like, is the tariff thing like a principle thing? So.
Yeah, it's a principle because it's an act of aggression.
Okay.
Look at 2014 tariffs against Russia. It overwhelmingly, disproportionately hurt Ukraine. It hurt Ukraine's economy way more than it hurt the Russian.
Aren't the sanctions on Russia like helping? Like, is it hurting Russia?
I said 2014.
Right now though, like all this tariffs and sanctions and bans on goods being imported and all that shit, like on Russia right now.
It like in 2000, it hurt them both. But the country that was more affected negatively was Ukraine. Russia.
So I gotta expand this conversation because not everyone can jump in on the tariffs discussion. Look at Rez. He's dying a little bit in his eyes every time you mention it.
He agrees with me on China, by the way. I can see it in his eyes.
I'm gonna be honest. I am way out of my depth on a lot of that. So next time,
all you have to do is say it with confidence and go, China. Okay, they're ripping us off. I looked at some of these numbers and I said, wow, steel is really expensive. China.
Okay. But can I ask, just before you get off tariffs real quick, just one quick question. Fabian, as I understand this whole aggression thing, is it's aggression if you're moving first. But if you're reacting to aggression, then it's not aggression, right? It's just self-defense. So if somebody shoots you, that's aggression. But if you shoot them back, that's not aggression.
Right. So, but you have to follow the gentleness principle when dealing with an aggressor, right? Like you have to use minimal force necessary to end the aggression. So like, for example, trespassing is a form of aggression, right? But if an old lady with dementia is on the sidewalk and accidentally wanders into my yard, like I can't just like pull out my piece and start blasting at a bitch for trespassing, right? Like I have to use minimal force necessary, right? In order to stop the aggression. Or
So
otherwise I'm kind of becoming an aggressor.
So if a country is using tariffs against us, it's not rational to use tariffs back.
I think it is rational to use tariffs back, but I mean but then it becomes an analysis of like what will work to stop the problem.
Okay.
Okay. So fuck. Now I forgot what I was gonna ask, but I'm gonna try to feel it out here. But it's fine. You guys were saying interesting things. Doobie, you still there? Yeah. So like, sorry, what'd you say?
Said what's up?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So you asked the question, and you were about basically using American power. Like now, you're a person who I know is not shy at all about using American might to get what they want. When it comes to these human rights violations, how far would you escalate things if you cared? I'm not exactly sure you do. So you'll have to let me know. But if you do, how far would you escalate the use of American state power to resolve these issues?
With Qatar and with depends on the issue, right? So I related to something else. Back in the slavery days, the old slavery days, not the ones right now, the old one. The British Navy actually went around and took out slave ships and freed the slaves on them. caused a lot of shit for the countries these ships were coming from. I think in a couple of these countries, they had said like civil wars because they refused to do trade with these countries if they had slaves, right? So I feel like I'd go pretty fucking far. I think that was a good thing for them to do. They have the power to do it. The most powerful navy on the planet, one of the largest empires that's ever existed. They have the ability to do something good in the world. You should do it. So yeah, I think I'd go at least that far.
I would say the same thing except Halliburton. Right? Like nobody gets to use my tax dollars to like try and start fucking wars with other fucking countries because we believe that they're like abusing their own people. But if those other people want to get like a bank loan for their freedom and they want to fucking like, they want to say, hey, we want to be liberated, and they're being punished and some like mercenary force wants to come in and liberate some people based off of a bank loan, then fucking liberate them. Go in.
What sort of credit score do they need for that?
Higher than Greece. Nobody's got anyone for that one? All right.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
I'm sorry.
Prime, what do you
dealing?
Prime? Okay.
Yep. I am just dealing with.
It's
stuff. Oh,
yeah. Last
He's
time this
dealing with
happened too,
chat.
the fact that I have a leg or a knee showing means I'm sexualizing myself.
He's
and
dealing with chat.
We might be
Yeah.
dealing with some people from Middle Eastern countries who can't see why outside of like,
Right.
This motherfucker's name is like a play on like God hates F slurs,
Oh yeah.
and then he called
Nice.
me an HOR,
Yeah,
and
that's
it's
first.
still not deleted. And okay, did we get it?
Yeah,
no,
he's
still
not
there.
used to
actually-
seeing his women.
actually
his women out, that are like outside, not
Goff
in race, right?
hates
Like not in
fucks.
fucking
You
current.
did it to the wrong person. You did it to Trans Live Wire instead of
Yeah. The problem
It's
is
no,
the problem
they've
is,
all-
is that
all-
it's the problem is you're not properly diagnosing the problem. It's not that you have a knee showing. It's that if you have a camera angle above 120 degrees, automatic.
Well, and the fact that I'm the only
certain
woman,
countries.
therefore I'm fully sexualizing myself. And by the way, I'm not always on debate panels, so sometimes when I'm like using my body on stream, like when I was making a gingerbread house or whatever, I'm not going to change my whole fucking setup just because I'm on a conversation.
sorry. I didn't even know what thing you were.
It's a knee. What are we in
Yeah.
1810? The
I'm
fuck?
sexualizing myself, and then I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry later that men are sexualizing me.
Yeah,
That's
you're-
the
you're-
whole.
We're practicing.
You're not in a
good-
pilgrim outfit. Fuck.
We're practicing good Qatari customs right now.
Right, you got it.
He still isn't banned.
We have a
I don't
Qatar.
know what you guys are talking about. Sorry, I don't know. what you guys are
GOF
talking about.
hates FUGs.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's the username.
Hates FUGs. I don't know. Okay.
GOF hates FUGs is the username.
Okay.
I will reply to his comment.
Okay.
Don't you
all
guys
right,
have
so,
mods?
I was gonna
No,
say.
we don't. No, we don't actually.
Really?
We don't.
Nice.
But any which way, yeah. So, thank you for that.
All right, we're good.
So Doobie, getting back to
Yeah.
it, you were talking about British slave ships.
No. The British Navy taking out slave ships.
Oh, yeah,
Actually,
sorry,
Middle
the other
Eastern
way.
slave
Yeah,
ships.
sorry. Yeah, the
usually.
listen, yeah. mhm.
Barbary Wars
Um,
and all that.
So yeah, so you're saying that we want the U.S. to be using that level of aggression. Do you think that would be a good
Yeah.
idea?
I think if you have the power to do it, and we have way more power than Qatar, and if the countries surrounding Qatar, their allies want to say some shit about it, that's fine. We have more power than them too, right? And if they were willing to like escalate and say, hey, we're not going to let go of these slaves, well then hey, it gets escalated and they get a new government in a few years.
Yeah, the problem is that the power that you have, that quote unquote we have, is the stolen resources from me. So
Yes.
I don't appreciate the stolen resources from me going to like fight other people's wars while you continuously steal more of my resources. If you got all this extra cash laying around, then stop stealing so much goddamn
no.
cash from me.
No, but here, one of the ideas here is like when you buy the good, like you're, like if you do you agree that like giving weapons to communists should probably not be allowed, right? And when you buy goods from like these countries, you're giving them the resources they need to build weapons against us. So like
What do you mean by
gonna-
giving weapons to communists?
If I drop $20 on the street and China picks it up when I'm in China, I'm giving weapons to communists. Like,
yes, doing yes
because I
unironically.
lost a $20 bill.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're
I need to go
unintentionally did
under
it.
no pretext in this fucking chat. Like, I don't care. Like, what do you mean giving weapons to communists? Like, be more specific.
Our dealings with China are putting them in a position to threaten us with weapons.
Okay. Again, what you're saying is just cut off all business because it empowers them in some regard.
Over time, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's a very good analysis of what's right or wrong.
Yeah, no, this is a consequential
Like
thing,
you
right?
know, like right, like I don't like I have plenty of fucking problems with the Chinese state. I fucking hate communists, right? But also I don't want a bunch of Chinese people to starve. Like, you know what I mean? Like what I'm worried about is what is aggression, right? And how do we limit aggression, not engage in more aggression against other business partners, and like, you know, like you see what I'm saying? Like you actually need to think about what is morally right here and try and move that needle towards what is ethically justifiable, not just become this post-libertarian that says, well, China is a communist nation, so what we'll do is we'll sacrifice our principles in the means of defeating China. It's a slippery fucking, that's a bad road to start going down. Before you know it, you start having a few fascists running.
Look, no, look,
I
and this is like a difference, right? Fundamentally, I think I am like okay with consequentialism, especially here. And ultimately, I'm probably just a consequentialist, right? You know, I think it's nice to be able to like say, well, I did the right thing, but I would hate it if I live in a world dominated by China where I'm under their rule and I can just look, oh, at least I did the right thing. Like the right thing is not letting them take over the world. That's the right thing.
Can we still talk about Qatar, or are we over that? Okay, because I'm just wondering, this might be like a dumb question, or I am ignorant and uninformed, but like
I tried to link it back.
Oh, I'm muted.
No,
oh,
no, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
No,
never mind. Where was I here? Qatar. Oh yeah. So if we're talking about something like the World Cup, and we're trying to like bring them or put pressure on them to get a little bit more modern, whether it's like the slave stuff or the LGBT stuff or whatever. I'm wondering how can we effectively put pressure on them without like, because I don't know what their relations are to the rest of the countries that surround them. So if we apply pressure on them, like, is there not going to be some blowback that comes from whatever the existing like ecosystem is over there? Like, do you know what I'm trying to get at? Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think what somebody said earlier that like all the countries surrounding were blockading them for years or something before this. I don't know who said that.
That was me.
But like, yeah. So I mean, if that's the case, I think the blowback would probably be negligent because they're already most of the people around them hate them, at least from like the lens you're looking at it, Angel.
Okay.
So the problem is that there's.
Sorry, I'll just finish. I just want to add this on real quick. Is like because they are more similar culturally to those other Middle Eastern countries, are they not, than they are to us? So if we even make them more different from their already tense relations that they have around them, like it could potentially make it even more dangerous for them, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, it seems like you're stumbling into the problem of consequentialism, right? Is that like you don't actually know what occurs when you make many of these actions. You make educated guesses, right? Like if we start putting a ton of pressure on Qatar, right? You know, how does that change the situation in Yemen, right? Like does that like balance of power between Iran, you know, lead towards more or less conflict in Yemen? Like we don't fucking know, right? The question is, you know, do we, you know, what can we actually do? Because another thing is like we keep saying we, right? And like we is like this really weird, I feel like, kind of like holdover where we view ourselves as a nation. And so when we say we're talking about like America, right? But like America is made up of individual actors and the state and these corporations. And there's all these different players involved here. So like, I guess I wonder, like, maybe we have to name, when I say we, I mean this panel, we have to name what institution we would argue would make it a specific action, and not simply like we should do this. Right? This is why I said that, like,
I agree. Guys, just letting you know, we got a hype train. 53% done, 47% left. Help us with this hype train. Level 1 hype train. Help us get to level 2 hype train.
Yeah, right. I want a fucking hype train.
Subs to move along the hype train. Less than 3 minutes.
Subs would just be cool.
Let's see if we can make it to a level 2. Thanks to the people helping us so far.
Tonight.
You were going to say something.
Rough night.
Sprout.
Yeah, the United Nations. So when Scott asked that question, I'm saying the United Nations is probably going to be the best one to focus that we on, because that's when it's most effective, is when the UN gets involved, when we have our European partners get involved with what we're doing. That's when it is most effective. The United States by ourselves do a lot, but usually what we do, our European partners follow up behind, and that's typically when you see the most progress, is when the UN decides to step behind us.
I mean, that might work for Qatar, maybe. I mean, like, the problem is the resources, right? And so when you have China and Russia, and and depending upon like who's on the 13, certain actions are kind of just like gonna be off the table. I don't know. I think that the United States is probably able to affect more change than the United Nations personally. But I mean, an argument could be made both ways, like at least when you're talking about small incremental changes. I don't know that the United Nations is really going to be able to enforce it, right? The United Nations might put together a committee, might put together some goals, might get some corporate, partners and NGOs to work towards those goals. I think the only like hard power situation, right, is going to have to be done from like the State Department or something, in terms of like certain concerns that they have for protections for American citizens. And I think that's probably where I would focus, is going to the State Department and saying, look, we're going to FIFA, we're going to Qatar, or whatever other country that we're pissed off about in 2 fucking years or 6 months from whatever other sporting event, right? And we say, like, look, the State Department is going to demand certain concessions in terms of protecting its American citizens. And I don't know, I think that could be a positive thing, right? Is essentially opening up tourism during these sporting events and basically demanding that these countries treat them similarly to the way that they're treated in Western nations. Because I think you have a lot of people in these countries, we forget that we're not just dealing with nations, we're dealing with individual actions. We look at it from a systems theory perspective, right? Sometimes things are from the top down, but sometimes things are from the bottom up, especially when you're talking about cultural change. And so I think if we can have the State Department demand that tourism come in, and you have local business owners and local people see people come in and go, wow, these people aren't that bad. I may still have some problems with their degeneracy. I may still have problems with their culture, etc. But like, my business did well, and the interactions that I had with the American tourists were friendly. And I think that leads probably to more change than trying to enforce boycotts that will ultimately fall through.
Yeah. So, but our friend Dibby was talking about a more aggressive stance. I was really wanted to focus in on that. Taking a more aggressive stance. Who else? Obviously, Scott doesn't. But does anyone else agree with that stance, that the U.S. should? And again, these can be like really vile human rights violations, right? Well, especially in the case of China. And Dibby, I guess I should ask you that. Like, does this still hold up for China, for all the things that they've done?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like China, you'd have to take like a much more careful approach. But I guess we could compare it to something like moving out of Qatar for a bit. During the Obama administration's term, they had that situation where it was like I think like 100.
Does anybody feel like Twitch vibe tonight is just different?
By Boko Haram, and then sold.
Noticing it's like low numbers, and kind of everybody's
like
like super chill tonight.
Married away,
it's strange.
Like, do you think that
I don't know.
It would have been
weird
wrong
Monday.
for the Obama administration?
It's the holidays.
There would have been an issue with the Obama administration using our military to go and find that group and
Mhm.
get those girls, and if they couldn't find the girls,
It's not
take
just
out the
us;
group.
it's everywhere. Vibrations are higher today.
What about
Like,
this?
would anybody here have had like an issue with that? Maybe Scott, because of Forrest, and he's not okay with the government using his money that way or whatever. But the rest of you,
Take
right?
out
So
Boko Haram.
I would, yeah.
yeah, so when those girls were kidnapped, right? Girls in another country, no relation to or connection to the United States at all, but they were kidnapped from their school by some like jihadi group and sold off into like marriages, right? Like young girls. Would it have been wrong for the United States to use our military to go and stop that?
No.
No, it wouldn't be wrong for the United States to go and stop that, but it's
Would you be in
much
favor of that?
different. What?
Would you be in favor of the United States doing that?
Yeah, I think I would. I think disrupting terrorist cells is generally a pretty good thing for like the whole of the world. I don't think was Boko Haram like backed up by a government anywhere.
I don't
Like
think so, actually.
specific.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
so
think-
like if it's like a random terrorist cell that is probably not backed by the government, probably is not looked at well by a government, but that government doesn't have the ability to do something about it. Yeah, we can step in and create a coalition with that government to do something about that.
I'm
Right, to
also
go ahead and free
assuming-
those girls.
I'm also assuming this isn't their first time. I'm assuming they've done shit like this before, and this isn't their first time doing this.
So you guys, I guess the question I was really asking with that is, are you guys okay with the United States imposing our laws across the planet, which is what that would be, right? We have a law against taking people against their will, marrying off young girls, et cetera, et cetera. So, given that this is happening in a place that is not, within our sovereign borders, we're basically enforcing our laws across the entire fucking planet at that point, right? Like, is there anything wrong with that from your perspective?
We do
I
that
think when
anyways.
it comes to people that are that vulnerable, that it's easier to justify in a situation like that. It seems it's
It's a
hard.
human rights
not-
violation.
I think if there's a country, like again, the way I'm saying this is if a country doesn't like this, it agrees with us and it's a good, we should do it, right? Like the thing is, if there is a state that like, let's say just tomorrow, like South Korea just completely goes and does the Juicy Girls thing to literally everybody, right? And that is the only thing that they do, right? As a country, then we should cut off, in my opinion, all trade if they're literally selling off their entire, female population, right? Like that's my look at that, because they're causing like ultimate levels of harm, or at least not establish new trade with them. But I think this is different than if we're dealing with a paramilitary organization that does not have like a state, it doesn't have like borders, it doesn't have anything like that. But I think that it's like
would
we
you require
wouldn't-
the United States get permission from Nigeria before going in and trying to find Boko Haram?
me
Or if the
personally,
Nigerian government explicitly said, "Hey, we're handling this, stay out of our fucking border," would you be okay
I
with
mean,
this
as
and,
long as
"Hey,
they
sorry,
handled
yeah,
it."
we don't like this enough that we're going to say, "Hey, fuck your borders, we're going to come and do it anyway."
Oh, even
Um,
if Nigeria was saying no, don't come here.
Well, then we just stopped helping Nigeria on the world stage to begin with. Like this is like again exercising soft power against like a state versus a paramilitary organization. Along with that, if it's like there's some provable harm that's causing the United States and Nigeria can't do it, it's like I don't like it, but I mean, yeah, we're probably gonna do it. It's what
It looks
we
like
do.
I don't even think that's a fine line. I don't think that's a hard question to answer. I think yes in the first scenario, because we've been asked to go in. It gives us it actually gives us like positive perceptions around the world because of the popularity of that situation that was in there. And if we can go in with some success and have a successful operation with the support and permission of the home government, then yeah, absolutely you can do it. But these are sovereign countries, and our entire international rules-based order relies upon the notion that that borders are sovereign and that you need that kind of permission to go in, unless there's an extreme element of national self-interest, like when we crossed into Pakistan to get bin Laden, for instance, because you could make a claim of self-interest there, like national self-interest. I don't think you could make that claim with regards to Boko Haram. So without permission, no, I don't think we could go in.
Well, I guess it became self-interest when it looks like in 2015 when Boko Haram pledged allegiance to ISIS or ISIL. That's when the U.S. ramped up their support. But yeah, I guess it was just then that they decided to.
Yeah, fuck
again,
nations' borders. Nations they're all fucking illegitimate anyways. The only borders that matter are private borders. And if these individuals want to fucking secure the help of some company that chooses to save them based off of donations, volunteer, charity work, or a loan, like, let them go in and fucking kill the fuck out of Boko Haram. But the idea that we're going to start policing the entire world based off of, like, my money and my interactions, right? We're going to be the world police. Like, where does that end? Well, I'll tell you where it ends. It ends in one of two places. Either one, we become the world police for everyone until our economy collapses, or we become the world police for everyone, and to stop the economy from collapsing, we utilize that power and extort resources from these people, and then we become an empire. Or two, we don't actually become world police for everyone. What we do is we work in conjunction with corporations and business interests to decide who, when, and where we want to be world police when it comes to certain friends or certain situations. And that's where we're at right now. And I think that it's completely unjustified.
Sprout, you're talking, but we can't hear you.
You might be talking to
I said I'm for the American empire option.
Based.
So Fabian, the scenario you described was Ross Perot, right? That was him going in and getting his own employees out with the private army that he raised.
Man, look, I know I kind of remember that, but you got to remember I was like 2 years old when Ross Perot was running for president.
Yeah, sure.
Like,
yeah, this was before that.
Yeah, but I'm saying when he was running
80s.
for president, like, you know what I mean? Like, I was 2.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, like, I have no problem with a private military force. And I don't give a fuck about nation states' borders if, like, individuals that are victims are asking for help and soliciting that help from an aggressor. Like, I understand the reality, which is that, like, a company might not want to engage in that because they incur the wrath of that nation state. And that's an unfortunate reality of the world. But, like, at the end of the day, like, you know, I don't think that actually is something to factor in other than just, you know, whether or not someone chooses to engage in that behavior. So it doesn't change the morality of it. Like, this idea that a country's, well, we have our national borders. It's like, okay, you drew lines on a map and said this is ours, and then you maintain it through theft and oppression. Cool. Fuck you, people are dying.
So, Prime, what do you think about that? Right, so the United States using its military to deal with Boko Haram, or even, I mean, I'm sure we can imagine a scenario in which these, like, Qatari migrants or immigrants, well, I guess they're not from Qatar. Immigrants in Qatar are put onto some, like, yacht, right? Some billionaire yacht, and they're basically slave. That yacht goes out into the ocean somewhere. And would you be opposed to the United States coming in, boarding the yacht, and saying, "Hey, we're going to take all these slaves away from you. Fuck you. Fuck your stupid yacht. We're gonna seize the yacht even, right? We're gonna say, hey, you've done something that we think is immoral, so we're gonna impose our laws upon you." Like, what would be your, like, opposition to that?
I guarantee we do the same way with special forces. We just don't hear about it.
No, I'm talking about, like, doing it publicly, openly, not in secret.
Yeah.
Like, taking a firm sense that, hey, if you have slaves and you're on the fucking ocean, if we catch you, we're taking the fucking boat.
So
this is
go ahead.
well, yeah. This is the thing that I've wrestled with a lot, right? Like, when I first started Twitch, like, I made a splash, like, talking about American interventionism, and it was the context of going into Iraq or Afghanistan, and people like try to post hoc rationalize those things. I want the U.S., if there is something wrong, and we have the ability to do something about it, to take an action. What that action actually is up for debate. But on the thing that you're talking about, so in that specific example, I'd say yes, do that. When it comes to like invading the territory of, sorry, what country was that again?
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Thank you so much. Yeah. When it comes to doing that, I don't think Nigeria would have wanted us to invade, and so that changes the calculation, right? Like even if I don't, like, so there could be a person in charge of Nigeria, and I think this probably actually counts for real life, that I don't like, a person who is like autocratic. They didn't do the action themselves, but they're allowing these things to happen to their people. Like, shouldn't we have some sort of order within, like international order, in which we respect these boundaries? Because if not, that can invite other people to take aggressive action, like Russia, right? Russia saying, well, we're going to denazify Ukraine, right? That's the reason we're doing it. That's the reason we said we're doing it. So why are you getting in our way, right? There were a bunch of Nazis, as far as we could tell, in Ukraine. So we were going in there, we're getting rid of those Nazis. So like that seems wrong. Yeah, I know that I'm a little scattered here, but I hope that makes sense.
No, you're exactly right. Right, what you're talking about is that you established a moral norm, right? When you establish a moral norm, is you're saying that you believe, or you're establishing that it's justified to do a certain action, or that one ought to do an action, right? Depends upon whether or not it's prescriptive or descriptive, right? And so when you say it is right to go into Nigeria, violate their quote unquote sovereign borders, right? As a nation state to fix a problem of terrorist action, right? What you're saying is that action is right at universalized, right? Because whenever you say something is right, you in order for something to actually be right or wrong, it must be universalizable, right? Something can't be right in one instance and wrong in another instance unless you've added specific modifiers to that changes it. So for example, killing and murder versus self-defense, right? If you say that if it's self-defense, it's not murder, right? That's universalizable, right? So killing isn't necessary, like you've added something to it. And so when you say, well, what we're going to say is it's okay to violate the national border so long as it's, terrorism, right? But the problem is now you have a nation state that has carte blanche to invade another country based off of the presumption of terrorism. Well, what does terrorism mean? Were we real careful about how we defined that? Or did we just come up with a word? Can we declare another war on terror? What does that mean? Just like you stated, we could go into Ukraine and say, well, we're denazifying. Nazis are terrorists, right? And so like what you have to be very careful about trying to establish a moral norm, because once you say that something is justifiable, then you get to use that consequentialist analysis, right? Of like the subjective preferences of the individuals that are taking the action, or the media state apparatus that's going to tell you what's right or wrong. And before you know it, you're doing a lot of fucking things that you didn't think you'd be doing.
Well, yeah, Scott. I mean, like, we haven't formally declared war since, I think, World War II. Like any conflict between them have been like conflicts, not formally declared war.
Doobie would say that like, well, we can take that action because we're America and because we're better. Isn't that right, Doobie?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know my friend well.
I think, yeah, of course.
So that's one way of looking at things. Yeah, but yeah, so that's my answer. And thank you for that, Scott. That was actually quite useful. But
I think to be super clear, I think we have like a superior culture, superior like what's the word I'm looking for? I guess our like national morality, if there is such a thing, or the things that Americans tend to hold as like principles. I think are just generally better than things that are going on in Africa or the Middle East. So Yeah, I have no issue with saying that we are a better nation than them. And given that we are a better nation and we have the ability to affect change, we should affect the change.
All right, why don't we? We haven't talked about that in a long time, Dilly. So why don't we continue on?
There's my whole response. I want to get that in real quick.
Sure. Why don't we continue on that conversation if you have time during our open panel? Because I would actually like to revisit this. Thanks everyone for coming here. We're a little over time, and we got new people here. They're not used to us just like running over a half hour. I want to make a good impression for them. All right. So thanks all for stopping by. This has been a lot of fun. Guys and gals within the audience, if you liked what you saw, what you heard, if you thought this was worthwhile, hit that follow button. If you've just showed up, hit that follow button. Or how about the channel? Like Zerg Daddy just, oh my god, I don't, oh fuck, Zerg is terrible. But thank you still. You've made up for your bad choice in race by using your Prime Gaming here on the channel. Thank you so much. It's a huge help. Much appreciated. Support the channel, subs to the channel, get bits to give subs. It's how I power this. This doesn't happen without that support. So subs to the channel, get bits. Can't do it without you. I'm going to give an outro to all these great individuals, but remember everyone, we still have more content. We're gonna have open panel. We are, yeah, I am being racist against Zerg. They're terrible. Like, don't trust them. They're garbage people. They're not even people really. So yeah, that's my stance. Copy and paste that one. We're gonna give an outro to all these great individuals, but we have more content coming afterwards. So stick around. We're not done. Panel's not done. So we'll start with our friend Lactoid. Lactoid, thank you for coming through. This was I really like your opening for the second strong strength, you know. Yeah, you don't expect that from Canadians. But you break the mold and I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I actually, this is one of the topics that I think I found myself agreeing most with Doobie on. Not only do I believe in the concept of self-defense, but I also believe in the concept of defense of others. And I don't think that people lose like value just because they happen to be, I'm not saying somebody here thinks this, but like one of my principles is that I don't think that people lose value regardless of where they are on the planet. And so if we can intervene and stop a crime from happening, it's a good thing to do so. As long as we can stop that crime from happening without having worse things, happen down the road. Blowback's a real thing that needs to be considered. But I mean, there's examples of where, by intervening and exerting influence, sometimes military influence, we've been able to accomplish great things, right? South Korea, Taiwan, Kosovo, right? Countries that wouldn't exist, right? South Korea would be a communist hellhole unless we got involved militarily, right? And thank God for those people who we spared that outcome. If you like what I had to say, you can find me on Anti-Communism United on Discord, Twitch, and YouTube, or Anti-Com United on Twitter. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And I really love what you said there at the end. Super interesting. Yeah. And if you'd like to stop by or anyone else, we'd love to hear more about that. Scott, thank you as well for coming through. I think this is one of your better performances because I happen to agree with some of the things that you said.
Of course. Histrionics. All right. Yeah, I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. You can catch us Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere. Seemingly interesting. This is probably one of the places where I've disagreed with Lactoid. We normally usually agree. I would say that Lactoid is engaging in having a crystal ball. I love you, buddy. I know it's my closing statement. I got no problem if you say one or two things, but I just want to point out that Lactoid doesn't actually know if South Korea would be better had we not been involved. No one knows what a different historical timeline would look like. If maybe we hadn't wasted a bunch of money and resources and respected private property rights, America could, for example, be a city upon a hill with technology, with flying cars and all of these things, because we didn't waste resources bombing and murdering people, but instead focused on higher GDP, economic growth, innovation, science. Maybe we'd have already colonized Mars if we hadn't have done those things. We just don't know. He's guessing. And I think that really comes down to principles and whether or not you actually follow them when rubber meets the road. That being said, tomorrow, come check us out. We will be doing a charity stream for survivors.org, PAVE, Partners for Action, Voices for Empowerment, to help connect. It's a charity to help connect survivors of intimate partner violence, trafficking, etc., to different resources. We'll be interviewing the founder. We'll have Mike Harlow on. We're gonna do some trivia with him. Aristocracy stopping by. Oh shit, who else? Oh, Brian McWilliams. If you're a big libertarian, you know who that is. If you're not, you probably don't know who that is, but he's hilarious. You should come check him out. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. We're doing prizes and giveaways and all kinds of fun stuff. Get in that Christmas spirit while also getting depressed about victims of abuse. I don't know how those two things work, but hopefully they work out for us.
All right. Scott, I meant to say this before in your opening when you talked about charities to figure out which ones are really good ones. There is a like a meta charity, I don't know, that does this research, and I forget exactly what it was. I saw on Legal Eagle they did like a sponsorship for them on that YouTube channel. If I can figure it out, I'll let you know. But like, I usually use. I mean, I giving it away a little bit because I'm going to do this, in greater detail tomorrow. But I usually use, if like I'm really going to think about a charity deeply, I usually use Cause IQ, charitynavigator.org, and then I get their 990 forms. Right. So between Cause IQ, we can look at like their ESG things, how woke of a company they are. If you don't like that type of shit, or if you do like that type of shit, you can look at a lot of like their money, their finances, all that good stuff. But learning how to read a 990 form is really important if you're actually going to put significant investment into a charity. Thank you so much. Anonymous Gifter, thank you for gifting a sub to Scott, but just Scott, SCOTT, not Fabian Liberty.
Let's see how it is. It's been a chill night. It's been a very slow night for me tonight. Very like relaxed, not a lot of views. Very weird vibe tonight. Everybody on this panel was chill too. What the fuck is happening in the universe? I need some astrology people to tell me what's going on. I need someone to be like, well, actually, see Pisces. It's in its retrograde.
Like, yeah, it was a full moon in Gemini.
Yeah, it's also the post like full eclipse of the full moon. Twitch.tv/Resver. It was really great to be here. America's based, Bogaram not based. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, really hard takes. Also, Brittney Griner being released was one of the coolest things that's happened in a while. So enjoy your lives. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
Raz, before you leave, what's up? Thanks for coming through. I do really appreciate you coming. We didn't really plan it ahead, but thanks for coming. I hope to have you here again.
100%. Yeah, you give me topics ahead of time. I'm learning how to argue things, so I take a lot of time to do that because I have a stutter and it sucks. So let's go.
I've never noticed your stutter, Rezzy.
I prepare a lot.
It's really fucking bad. Holy shit.
Oh, wow.
I noticed nothing.
Let's go to our friend Spartacus. Spartacus, thank you so much for coming through and chatting with us.
Hey, yeah, not a problem. I always enjoy coming through. I always enjoy having these Monday night debates. But it was a good discussion. And one, stop going to Russia. Just please stop going to Russia. And two, people are throwing bricks in glass houses. I guess we'll figure out how that ends up. But yeah, it was really fun. It was good talking to all y'all. It was good to hear some valid points brought up on opposite sides. Gave a little bit of a basically mind exercise to try and work with it. But yeah, I do appreciate it and look forward to the next one, Prem.
Thank you. Angel, this was your first time here. I hope this didn't scare. This wasn't a lot of first timers. Things get super aggressive, super fast. It didn't happen this time, I don't think. So hopefully that means you'll be back in the future.
Yeah, that was fun. Definitely can do it again. I think the most aggression that I've gotten from the stream so far has been the last couple times the people getting mad about my knee. So enjoy the knee, guys.
This is like fucking the 19th century, and like
I know, or maybe they're actually they think it's indecency. Whoa, what is Doobie's cam? Is that pubes? Doobie, what are you doing?
He's doing a Mr. Girl impression. Let him go.
Okay, stop stealing my focus, DB. Twitch.tv
Okay,
/angel_dreams with a Z and then another underscore. Remember it. Because
good work on
if you forget the underscore, it gets fucked up and you won't find me and people raid out and then they don't get to me. So don't do that.
Good work on the underscores. The people love underscores. They've always said it, right? Everyone's always said they love typing underscores into computers. Thanks so much for that. But next we have, and thank you so much, Aiko. Thank you for coming through and adding some interesting historical dimension into the topic like they usually do, right?
Sure.
By talking about Ross Perot from some ancient times that no one knows about. So thank you.
Well, people keep bringing up these hypotheticals, and these hypotheticals have already happened like multiple times. So I like to point out there that they're not really hypotheticals. I think that happened several times in this stream today too. So I thought that was interesting. Like Roman Polanski, for instance, like he did exactly the thing that Lactoid mentioned in a hypothetical about foreigners coming in and molesting children, things like that. Okay. Also, I gave you a link to that, Lactoid, by the way, if you want to look at it. It's in private chat still. By the way, the most disturbing thing about Doobie's view right there was the balloons that appeared to be going like straight up his butt during that view. So
why would he do that?
Thank you for that.
The fuck? I was being lewd in solidarity, and you fucked up the whole thing. Okay.
All right. Okay.
I was trying to be supportive.
Oh, that was your knee. I get it.
Yeah, so I'd say the most important thing to consider is with regards to historical context to all this, because I don't think I can add to the main argument too much compared to what everyone else is saying. But I still think in academic debate, we have something called the easy out, which is when you give a judge a very easy reason to vote for you as opposed to your opponent. And I think the easy out when it comes to something like Qatar is to give us the solution to all problems with petrostates, which is to just get off fossil fuel, do clean energy, like what Fabian said, like invest in nuclear greatly, but also, anything that's going to get us off. I just looked at, I update a spreadsheet for ERCOT, which is Texas's energy grid. And I just looked at the electronic batteries that we have in Texas. And I every once in a while, I compare it to how much natural gas we have. Because natural gas is dispatchable just like batteries are, except batteries are better. And we have, for every megawatt of gas power, for every 6 megawatts of gas power, we have 1 megawatt of battery power planned in the next 2 years in Texas, which means we have a heck of a lot more battery power than anybody ever thought we would have at this point. And my only point for saying that is because if we can not consume our own natural gas and instead send that shit to Europe, then Europe is going to be less dependent on Russia, less dependent on the Middle East, less dependent on petrostates. And when we finally get EVs going, like we should, we can make those regions far, far less economically important and therefore less politically important too.
Thank you. All right, and last but not least, we have Doobie, our Dark Lord and Savior. Doobie, we appreciate you and your crotch. Everyone seems to, especially ladies. So Doobie, thank you for stopping by and for all your takes.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Doobie. I help run the politics server on Discord. Discord.gg/politics or politics.gg in your browser. We've got like 73,000 people on there right now, I think. And what do we have coming up?
Are you partnered with Discord?
Fuck no.
Oh.
No, Discord, we are definitely going to get banned by Discord pretty soon. It's going to happen. We're going to get deleted. We are a very open server in terms of what we allow people to say and do. Okay.
Right.
That's one way of putting it.
Doobie's just crossing his fingers like, please delete it. I'm tired of doing this. Please, Discord, figure it out.
Okay, there have been times
Kanye
where
learn his rhetoric from your Discord?
I wish. But he could have.
Rhetoric.
There have been times where I thought the server was deleted, like Discord had like a server outage or some shit. And I remember like the feeling of like the weight just being taken off my shoulders.
Oh,
It's like I was free. Like it was finally over. It's
Delivered.
like that fucking scene at the end of Babe where the farmer looks down and it's like, "That'll do, pig." Like I
That'll
felt
do.
like that kind of feeling.
That was amazing.
It's not over, is it?
Like
Oh,
Waterworld,
man.
where
No,
the
then
shit
it just
explodes.
comes back up 2 minutes later, and I'm back in the shed.
The worst part about it is not the racism; it's how loud everyone is. Jesus Christ!
It's a
Fuck's
wholesome
sake.
show.
Median
The
age.
worst-
Lots of people.
No, the worst part about it is going into one of the VCs and being like, why can't I talk? And then having to like try and figure out who the hell the mobs are and how to message them to try and get some kind of role to where you can talk.
Oh my god. Okay, let me. So
That's a good
over the
change.
weekend, I changed my username on the server to Allah, like the Muslim god thing, and I've been getting death threats from random users in my DMs for like 3 days, just demanding that I change it. I say, if you know it's good for you, go change it, or I hope you get cancer and die horribly and some shit like just nonstop.
They shouldn't
Like,
say that to Allah.
That's what I was saying.
Oh, it's
Like
great.
I have a guy in my
What if that
DMs
was actually
insisting.
Allah?
insisting that I'm Jewish, and he refuses to believe that I'm not Jewish for like the last 3 days. Like I don't know, it's really fucking weird.
Do you have any
Alright,
idea what the ages are on your server?
sorry, we can
It's a very
continue
diverse
this conversation afterwards. We got some people here. They want to leave, okay? But we have open panel, guys. We still have open panel. We have more content for you, so we need to go away, right? In fact, stick around, right? Whether you be you're here on the panel or out there in the chat, stick around because we have more content for you. Okay. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for stopping by, joining us. Open welcome panel next. If you want to join in, that'd be great. If not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion in my community. I know they appreciate you so much as I do. Have a good one. Goodbye.
Yo, Doobie.
Right.
Yeah, what's up?
Casimir says, quote, I welcome Doobie to the tribe.
I appreciate that. See, I have
Casimir's willing to
I did my
induct you.
23andMe. I have 1.1%
Honorary Jew.
Ashkenazi. Okay, 1.1% Ashkenazi Jewish DNA.
What's
And-
the rest of it?
Yeah, I'm really mixed.
Oh yeah, you're the
but-
frog, right?
No, I think it's like mostly like Spanish and like indigenous. So like Hispanic basically. But
Yo, Sproutingus, thank you.
I've also got like 6% Sub-Saharan African, and Prem refuses to let me
Oh,
into the
that's
Black
sick.
tribe. Yeah, he refuses to like he gets really pissed off whenever I say the N-word. It's really annoying.
Yeah, probably
But,
shouldn't do
yeah.
that.
You're darker than me
I
and I'm
do it all.
blacker than you, and I love that.
Yeah,
All
it's
right,
really
I'm
fucking
out
weird.
later, dudes.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.